After refusing to babysit my stepsister's kids, my dad threatened to cut me off, leading to uncovered family secrets and strained ties. I'm Sophia, 28F, and I've been dealing with some family trouble recently. My parents split when I was 10, and it was not a good experience. My mother moved out, and I lived with my father for several years. It was only the two of us. We were close, and I assumed we told each other everything, but as I got older, I realized there were many things my father withheld from me. When I was 16, my father introduced me to Linda, 50F. They had been dating for a time without informing me. I was hurt that he kept this a secret, but I attempted to be supportive. A few months later, they married, and Linda moved in with her daughter, Emma, 25F. The transition was difficult. I went from being an only kid to suddenly having a stepsister. Emma and I never really clicked. She was lively and outgoing, whereas I was more reserved. We were courteous to one another, but we never became close friends or anything like that. At 18, I moved out for college, relieved to get some space from my new family. I focused on my academics and met new people. After graduating, I found a job in the same city and decided to stay. I'd go to see my father and Linda on holidays, but that was about it. Emma and I scarcely communicated, just exchanging birthday texts and attending family dinners when I was in town. Fast forward to today. Emma recently came to my city with her 27-year-old husband Jake, and their two children, Liam, 4M, and Ava, 2F. Jake accepted a new position at a technology startup, so they relocated here. Emma does not work. She is a stay-at-home mom. When they first moved, my father called and requested me to assist them settle in. I was not delighted about it, but I agreed. I took them around the city, helped them select a suitable neighborhood, and even helped with part of the relocation. I believed that was the end of it, but I was mistaken. Emma began visiting my flat every evening with her children about a week after they relocated. She would ask me to look after them for an hour or two while she went errands. I initially accepted because I wanted to be nice, but it soon became a daily occurrence. I worked from home as a graphic designer, and while I was finished with work by the time she took the kids off, I value my alone time in the evening. I utilize that time to relax, work on personal projects, or socialize with friends. The kids are okay, but I'm not really a kid person. I don't know how to keep children entertained, and being around them always makes me nervous. I reminded Emma several times that she needed to hire a babysitter, but she always had an excuse. "It's just for today," she'd remark. "I'm still getting used to the city." I started to suspect she was taking advantage of me. Last Friday, I had planned to go out with my pals. We were celebrating my best friend's promotion, which I'd been looking forward to all week. I told Emma in the morning that I would be unable to watch the kids that evening. She said okay, and I assumed that was all. But at 6 p.m., just as I was about to leave, Emma arrived at my door with Liam and Ava. Before I could say anything, she handed me the kids and drove away. I tried calling her, but she did not answer. I even called Jake, but he did not respond. I had to postpone my plans and stay at home with the kids. I was infuriated. Emma had ruined my plans before, but this was the first time she fully ignored my refusal to babysit. I was trapped with the kids until 9 p.m., when Emma arrived to pick them up. When she arrived, I challenged her regarding her behavior. She pretended it was no big deal and claimed she had an emergency. When I pressed her for information, she was unclear and evasive. I warned her that this could not happen again and that she needed to get a proper babysitter. Emma became enraged and stated I was being selfish, and that families should assist one another out. That is when I lost my temper. I told her that we were not truly relatives. I explained that just because our parents married doesn't mean we had to be close. I informed her that we had scarcely spoken in years before she moved here, and now she was acting as if we were best friends. I told her I was done babysitting and that she shouldn't bring the kids over until invited. Emma left in tears. I felt awful, but also happy that I had finally established a clear boundary. I believed that was the end of it, but I was mistaken. The next day, my father called me. He was upset with me. He stated Emma had contacted him crying, accusing him of being nasty to her and the children. My father told me that I should apologize and continue to babysit Emma. He said that this is what families do for one another. I attempted to convey my side of the situation. I informed him about Emma taking advantage of me, repeatedly ruining my plans and never respecting my time or boundaries. But my father was not listening. He continued emphasizing that I should be more understanding and helpful. Then my father said something that deeply saddened me. He called me selfish and expressed disappointment in the person I had become. He told me that Linda and Emma were now my family, and I needed to accept it. He even mentioned how distant I had been since he married Linda, hinting that I still harbored a grudge. I was shocked. I told him they were his family, not mine, and that I was an adult capable of making my own decisions. I told him that I had my own life and obligations and I couldn't just drop everything to be Emma's on-call babysitter. This resulted in a major debate. My dad threatened to cut me off if I didn't apologize to Emma and resume babysitting. I felt hurt and enraged. I informed him I was self-sufficient and didn't need his money. I also suggested that if he wanted to cut me off over this, perhaps we weren't as close as I believed. My father ended the call by hanging up on me. Linda and other family members have since messaged me, accusing me of being unfair. They suggest that I be more empathetic of Emma's circumstances as a young mother in a new city. Some of my aunts have even called to say I'm pulling the family apart. Emma hasn't contacted me directly, but she has been writing on social media about how families should always be there for one another. She has been tweeting quotes about the value of sisters and how blood does not determine family. It appears like she is attempting to publicly guilt-trip me. I feel like I'm going mad. Am I truly in the wrong here? I don't think it's fair for Emma to expect me to be a free babysitter anytime she wants, and I don't think my father should threaten me about it. But I'm beginning to wonder whether I went too far in claiming Emma and Linda aren't my real family. Part of me feels guilty. Perhaps I could have been more patient with Emma. Perhaps I should have tried more to connect with her when we were younger. But another part of me is angry and resentful. I feel that my thoughts and boundaries are not being respected. I have always treasured my freedom. After my parents divorced, I learned to rely on myself. I worked hard in school, received a college scholarship, and have established a successful profession. I'm not used to having people rely on me in this way, and I'm not sure I want the responsibility. At the same time, I can't stop thinking about Liam and Ava. They're innocent in all of this, and I genuinely care about them. I don't want kids to feel rejected or undesired, but I also don't think it's good for them to have an aunt who dislikes babysitting them. I tried discussing this with some of my friends, but they seem divided. Some believe I'm being overly harsh and should try to work things out with Emma. Others believe that I'm correct in setting boundaries and Emma is entitled. I do not know what to do. Should I apologize? Should I stand my ground? I feel like this thing has spiraled out of control, and I'm not sure how to fix it. I don't want to lose my relationship with my father. But neither do I want to be taken advantage of. This scenario has caused me to question a lot about my family and myself. Am I really as selfish as my father claims? Have I been harboring bitterness for his remarriage without realizing it? Should I have worked more to develop a relationship with Emma over the years? I keep thinking about how things may have turned out differently if my mother was still present. She relocated across the nation after the divorce, and we don't communicate much. I wonder what she would say about all of this. I am at a loss. I believe that no matter what I do, someone will be upset with me. I want to do the right thing, but I don't know what that is anymore. Update 1. It's been almost 2 weeks since my last post, and things have only become more complicated. I'd like to thank everyone who responded and offered suggestions. It let me see things more clearly. After reading the comments, I decided to stand my ground. I did not apologize to Emma or begin babysitting again. This created some strained family relations. My father stopped communicating to me completely, and Emma continued to post passive-aggressive messages on social media about false family members and the value of being present for your nieces and nephews. The quiet from my father was especially difficult. We used to communicate at least once a week, but now there is nothing. I tried to convince myself that it was for the best and that I was creating good limits, but it still hurt. My stepmother, Linda, attempted to mediate the conflict. She contacted me several times, attempting to get me to reconcile with Emma and my father. She said she understood where I was coming from, but that family valued compromise. I appreciated her efforts, but I still felt as if everyone was rejecting my emotions. I immersed myself into my profession, taking on extra freelance projects to take my mind off the family problems. I also began going to the gym more frequently and took up a new hobby, painting. It was soothing to produce something lovely in the midst of my life's craziness. However, something unexpected occurred last week, which changed everything. I was in a neighborhood coffee shop working on a project when I overheard a familiar voice. It was Jake, Emma's husband. He was seated at a table with a woman I did not recognize. At first, I assumed it was a work colleague, but then I noticed Jake reach across the table and take the woman's hand. They spoke in quiet tones and looked at each other in a way that indicated this wasn't a nice meeting. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. Jake was supposed to be at work, not having what appeared to be a love encounter with another woman. I sat there frozen, unsure what to do. Shall I confront him? Should I snap a photo as proof? In the end, I did not do either. I silently gathered my belongings and exited the coffee shop. I went home, my thoughts racing from what I'd just watched. I did not confront Jake. I wasn't sure whether I should tell Emma. Will she believe me? Our relationship was already fragile, and accusing her husband of adultery might only make matters worse. I chose to sit with the information for a day and consider what to do. The next evening, Emma called me. I almost didn't respond, assuming it was another attempt to guilt me into babysitting. But something prompted me to pick up. Emma was in tears and asked if she could come over. I consented, believing she might have learned about Jake. When she came, she was a complete wreck. Her eyes were red and puffy and she appeared to have not slept for days. But it was not about Jake at all. Emma admitted she had lied about running errands when she left the kids with me. She acknowledged seeing a therapist for postpartum depression and anxiety. Emma broke down while telling me her experience. She has struggled since Ava's birth, feeling overwhelmed and inadequate as a mother. She hadn't told anyone in the family because she felt humiliated and terrified of being judged. She left the kids with me during her therapy appointments. I was stunned. I felt a range of emotions: pity for Emma's situation, rage that she had deceived and taken advantage of me, and regret for how harshly I had judged her. I told Emma that, while I realized she was going through a difficult period, it was unacceptable for her to lie and dump her children on me without notice. We spoke for hours. Emma apologized for her conduct and for not being open about her issues. She promised to hire a proper babysitter for her sessions. I informed her that, while I couldn't be a regular babysitter, I would be happy to assist out on occasion if she gave me advance notice. As we spoke, I began to view Emma in a new light. I learned that despite her seemingly wonderful life, she struggled just like everyone else. It made me reflect on how little I understood about her life and how quickly I had judged her. Emma also discussed her emotions of loneliness after moving to the city. She stated she was thrilled to be closer to me, believing we could finally have the sisterly bond we had never had. She said she had pushed too hard and too quickly, and she apologized for not respecting my boundaries. I also conveyed my own feelings. I told her how I felt left out after Dad remarried and how I battled to fit into our new family dynamic. We chatted about our childhood, sharing recollections and opinions that we had never discussed before. Just as we were beginning to restore our relationship, I was faced with the decision of whether to inform Emma about what I observed with Jake. I debated the option, but in the end I chose to be honest with her. I gently informed her what I had seen in the coffee shop. Emma's reply was not what I expected. She didn't appear astonished or outraged. Instead, she became extremely silent before saying, "I know about Jake's meetings." It turns out that the woman Jake was meeting is his half-sister. Jake was adopted as a baby and had lately discovered his biological family. He had been meeting with his half-sister in secret since he was not ready to inform Emma or the rest of the family. He was concerned about how it may affect their family relationships, particularly with his adoptive parents. I was happy Jake was not cheating, but I was also frustrated by our family's concealment. I told Emma that all of this, her treatment, Jake's meetings, could have been avoided if everyone had simply been honest from the start. Emma agreed and said she'd speak with Jake about being more open with the family. She also pledged to be more open with me in the future. We concluded the evening on a brighter note than we had in weeks. The next day, I called my father. I informed him about Emma's troubles and how we had worked things out. I also told him that, while I was willing to have a relationship with Emma and occasionally help out with the kids, my limits needed to be respected. To my amazement, my father was understanding. He apologized for his reaction and acknowledged that he had put too much pressure on me. We promised to improve our communication and respect each other's boundaries more. We also talked about the past, including how his remarriage affected me and how we had grown apart over time. It was a challenging conversation, but it seemed like we were finally confronting topics we had been ignoring for too long. Things have calmed down, but I still feel like I'm walking on eggshells. There are numerous secrets and unsaid concerns in our family. I'm glad Emma and I were able to sort things out, but I have a feeling there will be more trouble. I'm trying to stay positive, but I'm also bracing myself for what might happen next. This entire experience has made me realize how little I knew about my family members. It's made me ponder what additional mysteries lie beneath the surface. For the time being, I'm working on gradually restoring my connections with Emma and my father. It's not easy, and there are still periods of tension, but it appears like we're headed in the right path. I'm discovering that family connections are complicated, and communication and honesty are essential. I'm also trying to strike a balance between being present for my family and preserving my own boundaries. It's a work in progress, but I'm hopeful that we can be family without compromising our distinct wants and identities. Update 2. It has been approximately a month since my last report, and I wish I could say that things have improved, but they have not. In reality, things have gotten a lot worse. Remember how I started to feel like more drama was about to unfold? Well, I was correct, but I could not have foreseen what happened next. Emma called me last week, frantic. She was in tears and hardly intelligible. When I calmed her down, she informed me that she had received some horrible news. Jake hasn't simply met his half-sister. He's had an affair with her. Emma grew suspicious of Jake's numerous meetings and decided to follow him. One day, she noticed him meeting the woman at a hotel rather than the customary coffee shop. She approached him, and he confessed to the affair. He attempted to excuse it by claiming that he felt a connection with his half-sister that he had never had before, but Emma was understandably appalled and devastated. I was shocked. I felt bad for not pressing harder when I initially saw Jake with the woman. I attempted to console Emma as best I could over the phone, but she was distraught. She explained that she was leaving Jake and asked if she and the kids could stay with me for a bit. Despite our previous disagreements, I couldn't send her away in her time of need. I agreed to let them stay. Emma and the kids moved in with me the next day. It's been a tough transition. My flat isn't really designed for 2 young children, and Emma is still really emotional. She alternates between tears and aggressive outbursts. I'm trying to be supportive, but it's taking its toll on me. To make matters worse, Jake has been bugging Emma with continuous phone calls and messages. He's even popped up at my flat several times, causing havoc in the corridor. I had to threaten to contact the police to get him to go. It has been distressing for everyone, especially the children, who do not understand what is going on. Another explosive went off in the midst of the mayhem. My father contacted me, seeming anxious. He said he needed to tell me something important and asked if he could come over. When he arrived, he dropped a bombshell that shocked me to the core. It turns out Jake's half-sister is also my half-sister. My father admitted to having a brief romance with Jake's biological mother years ago, before meeting my stepmother. This woman gave birth to a daughter, who Jake has been having an affair with. I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I heard. My father had held this secret for nearly 30 years. He stated he only found out recently when Jake's half-sister took a DNA test and it matched some of our family members. My father got in touch with her and learned the truth. I felt as if my entire universe was crumbling. Everything I believed I knew about my family was a lie. I was angry with my father for keeping this a secret, at Jake for betraying me, and at myself for failing to anticipate any of this. I haven't told Emma about the recent revelation yet. She's already coping with so much, and I'm worried this may push her over the brink. But I know I'm going to have to tell her someday. The previous several days have been a haze. I've been trying to keep things regular for the kids while simultaneously supporting Emma and dealing with my own thoughts about this new sister. I've taken some time off work to deal with everything, but I'm not sure how long I can do it. I'm at a loss on what to do next. My flat has become a refuge for my sister and her children, a safe haven from her cheating husband, and it now feels like the hub of a decades-long family scandal. I'm trying to keep everything together, but I feel like I'm drowning in secrets and lies. I'm not sure how our family will ever heal from this. The trust has been damaged, and I'm not sure it can be repaired. I'm thinking about going to therapy to deal with all of this, but for the time being, I'm just taking it day by day. I've tried to contact some friends for help, but it's difficult to explain the scenario without seeming like I'm making it up. How would you inform someone that your brother-in-law is having an affair with your hidden half-sister? It sounds like something from a horrible soap drama. I am also concerned about the long-term ramifications of all of this. What will happen to Emma and the children? Will Jake seek custody? And what about my half-sister? Should I try to reach her? Do I really want to know her? Given the circumstances, it's also worth considering how this may influence my relationship with my father. I'm upset that he kept this a secret for so long, but I understand that he was probably terrified and ashamed. Even so, knowing what he did makes it difficult to look at him in the same way. For the time being, my primary emphasis is on Emma and the children. Despite the volatility, I'm attempting to provide a stable atmosphere for them. It's not simple, but it seems like the proper thing to do. I'm also attempting to care for myself. I've started journaling to help me process my emotions, and I'm making an effort to do something I enjoy every day. Even if it's as simple as reading a book or going for a walk. I know I'll have to make some important decisions shortly about Emma's predicament, my connection with my father, and whether or not to contact my half-sister. But for now, I'm just trying to get through each day. If anyone has been through something similar and has any suggestions, I'd be grateful. This entire scenario is daunting, and I could use all of the help I can get. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update, and much has changed. After the shock of the discoveries subsided, we had to cope with the aftermath. I eventually told Emma that Jake's affair partner is our half-sister. She was devastated all over again, but it also provided her with the necessary closure. She sought for divorce and received a restraining order against Jake. The legal procedure has been messy, but Emma is sticking firm. Emma and her children remained with me for approximately a month before she found a tiny apartment of her own. She began working part-time at a local bookstore and is gradually reconstructing her life. This experience has actually brought us closer together. I occasionally help her with the kids, but only on my terms, and she respects my boundaries. We haven't contacted our recently discovered half-sister. We aren't ready for it yet, and I'm not sure we ever will be. The circumstances of her existence, as well as her acts with Jake, make it difficult to consider having a relationship with her. My relationship with my father has been strained. I was upset with him for hiding such a significant secret for so long. We've had several lengthy, painful discussions on trust, honesty, and the consequences of his decisions. He has been visiting a therapist to deal with his shame and learn how to regain trust with his family. It is a slow process, but we are making progress. I've started visiting a therapist to deal with all of my inner problems. It's helped me go through my feelings and set reasonable boundaries. I am learning that it is acceptable to prioritize my own mental health and well-being, even when family members are in crisis. One unanticipated result of all this is that I've reconnected with my mother. After everything came out, I contacted her because I needed someone to talk to who wasn't personally engaged in the situation. We've had some wonderful discussions and she's been a source of comfort throughout this. We're striving to restore our relationship and it's been great to have her back in my life. I've also made significant changes in my life. I decided to take a sabbatical and travel. I needed to go away from the family drama and rediscover myself. I'm writing this post from a modest cafe in Europe, where I've spent the last month. This distance has helped me gain perspective. I've come to learn that, while family is important, it is not everything. People who genuinely care about you will respect your boundaries and will not pressure you to sacrifice your ideals or well-being. I don't know what the future holds for my family. The lost trust will take a long time to recover, if at all. But right now, I'm focusing on myself, healing and growing. I'm learning to define family on my own terms and surround myself with people who bring happiness into my life. Emma and I communicate regularly. She's doing better now, focused on her children and her new career. The divorce proceedings are ongoing, but she's managing them with strength I didn't know she possessed. We are arranging a trip with the kids next summer, something to look forward to. Jake, as far as I know, has left the city. His affair with our half-sister ended horribly, and he's been attempting to reconcile with his adoptive family. I don't know all the specifics, and honestly, I don't want to. My father and I are progressively restoring our relationship. We talk once a week, and while things haven't returned to normal, they're improving. He's trying to be more open and honest, not just with me, but with everyone in the family. This entire event has taught me a great deal about resilience, forgiveness, and the value of honesty. It has also taught me that it is never too late to establish boundaries and prioritize your own well-being. Thank you to everyone who has followed my tale and offered advice along the way. Your support has meant more than you realize. If there's one thing I've taken away from this, it's that life may take you by surprise in unexpected ways. All we can do is strive to approach each day with honesty, courage, and self-respect. My sister ruined my life by helping my ex-wife force me to pay child support for a child that isn't mine, while hiding her own affair. I'll start by saying that I truly despise my sister, albeit this wasn't always the case. She is my older sister, and as we grew up I admired her greatly. However, she has shown me throughout time that she can be a dreadful sister. My ex-wife Susie and I had been married for 2 years before I found she was cheating on me. The information came as a complete shock. I recall the moment well. I was browsing through her messages when I came across a chat in which she confessed to sexting with her male best friend for 8 years. Susie had always told me that he was merely a friend who had been in her life forever. Despite occasional envy, I had a great faith in her. We had established our relationship on trust, so when I unintentionally discovered the explicit text exchanges between them, I was completely taken aback. It felt as if the basis of all I thought in our marriage had crumbled in an instant. When I challenged her, she broke down and apologized profusely. She argued that it was only a one-time mistake and that her friend meant nothing to her in that sense. She vowed to block him and assure me that it would never happen again. Despite my rage and pain, I wanted to trust her. We began going to marriage counseling because I was terribly hurt by her betrayal and needed to understand why it happened and whether our marriage could be saved. Susie appeared to be truly sorry throughout counseling. She accepted responsibility for her misdeeds and worked diligently to recover my trust. For a time, it seemed like we were making significant progress. She was attentive, open, and willing to work to repair our connection. I decided to stay and give our marriage another opportunity because I still loved her and wanted to believe that people could change and relationships could be repaired. However, as you may have predicted, it was a huge error. After a while, I discovered that my ex-wife was attempting to meet up discreetly with her male closest friend. She had told me earlier that evening that she was going out with a coworker, but something about her demeanor looked off, and I had a nagging suspicion she was lying. I trusted my instincts and called the coworker after Susie departed to check in. To my dismay, they informed me that they had no plans with Susie. I felt a wave of sadness and confusion rush over me. It was becoming brutally evident that Susie was meeting up with this guy. Otherwise, she had no reason to deceive me. My mind raced with thoughts of betrayal as I attempted to call her several times, but she disregarded each call. As the night progressed, I felt an increasing sense of dread and helplessness. She arrived home pretty late and utterly inebriated. I'd been waiting for her all evening, sitting on the couch in our living room, my head whirling with emotions. When she stepped through the door, she didn't acknowledge me. Instead, she stumbled past me on her way to the bedroom, as if I didn't exist. I sat there feeling invisible and completely saddened, understanding that the woman I once trusted and loved had become a stranger to me. Later, as I was about to fall asleep, I heard her phone beep on the bedside table, indicating a message notification. Susie had fallen asleep wearing her evening clothes, evidently too inebriated to change. I carefully covered her with a blanket and, filled with dread and curiosity, leaned over to see what message she had gotten. I knew the number right away. It belonged to him, her male acquaintance. My heart fell as I read the words. That was so much fun. We should do this more frequently. The message ended with a tongue and a sweat drop emoji, which made matters worse. I felt a rush of sickness come over me. There was no way a guy would send a message with those emojis unless something big had occurred between them. My mind raced with frightening thoughts of what they may have done. I felt ill to my stomach as I realized that my worst worries were probably true. I attempted to relax myself, but it was impossible. The betrayal felt like a real agony in my chest, and I couldn't get rid of the thought of them together. I couldn't get any sleep that night. I tossed and turned in bed, my mind filled with fear and grief. I kept repeating everything in my thoughts, wondering how it had gotten to this point and what I should do now. The night seemed long, and by the time daylight arrived, I knew nothing would ever be the same. When I confronted Susie about that night and how she had lied, she tried everything she could to avoid accepting responsibility. Initially, she attempted to manipulate and gaslight me, stating that my lack of trust was the real issue and that calling her coworker was a violation of her privacy. She accused me of being neurotic and unreasonable. Her attempts to gaslight me were difficult and unpleasant, but I refused to give in. I brought up the message he sent and demanded an explanation. She dismissed it, claiming that's just how friends talk to each other, and dubbed me crazy for reading too much into it. Her dismissive tone simply strengthened my drive to discover the truth. I chose to play my final card. I told her that if she didn't come clean, I'd approach him directly. This warning seemed to hit a chord. She became visibly uncomfortable and attempted to persuade me not to contact him, evidently concerned about the repercussions. Susie eventually broke down and confessed, despite her initial resistance and reluctance. She stated that she had wanted to meet him for a long time and that they did make out after becoming intoxicated. Her statement was like a blow in the gut, confirming my worst concerns and breaking any remaining faith in her. She proceeded to defend her behavior, claiming that our marriage had grown dull and she was looking for excitement elsewhere. I firmly objected, pointing out that her adultery and deception were the very reasons our marriage had deteriorated. I reminded her that it was hard to go back to normal after realizing she was sexting with another man. Despite her attempts to excuse her behavior, I held firm. I made it plain that she was solely responsible for breaking our vows and shattering the trust we had built. I voiced my severe displeasure and informed her that I had reached my breaking point. I couldn't just ignore her acts and pretend everything was fine. Susie, recognizing the enormity of the situation, started appealing for pardon. She admitted her issues but begged me not to abandon her, emphasizing her willingness to work on herself and our relationship. Despite her vows, I realized that our trust had been irreparably shattered. The damage was too severe now, and I realized that continuing would just prolong the inevitable. Her infidelity had left a chasm that we couldn't mend, and our marriage was irreparably destroyed. After learning this, I had to make the most difficult decision of my life, ask her to leave my house. Fortunately, we had a prenuptial agreement in place, so I was relieved that it would safeguard me from any potential financial consequences of our divorce. Despite her desperation and attempts to enlist her friends to encourage me to forgive her, I stayed firm in my decision and eventually booted her out onto the streets. I know this may seem harsh to read, but I was in too much suffering. I had always imagined that we would grow old together, but her betrayal left me devastated, and I knew I would never be the same again. I told my parents and older sister, about what had happened between me and Susie. They were astonished and disturbed by the news, as no one had expected Susie's behavior. They informed me of their support for divorcing her, which gave me some consolation. Here is the punctuated paragraph, logically divided into pieces. However, appeared abnormally silent throughout this, which struck me as peculiar. When I asked for her thoughts, given her strong friendship with Susie during our marriage, she answered unexpectedly. Instead of embracing my emotions of betrayal as a result of Susie's behavior, questioned if I was definite about divorcing her, pointing out that, unlike me, Susie had family support. Na's remark surprised me since it appeared like she was more concerned about Susie's well-being than the emotional turmoil I was experiencing. I answered sternly to Na, indicating that I didn't care about Susie's support system because she had decided to betray me multiple times through infidelity. I made it clear that Susie's well-being was no longer my concern, and I wondered why she seemed more concerned about my ex-wife than about me, her own brother. Na justified herself, stating that she was only concerned about me and did not want me to make rash decisions concerning my marriage. She stated that she had always believed Susie and I were meant for each other and that she was still shocked by our divorce. As a result, she inquired as to whether I will have any regrets in the future. While I found her remark weird at the time, I didn't think about it too much later. The entire situation was already emotionally draining, so I concentrated on getting through my divorce first. Initially, everything appeared to be going well for me during the divorce proceedings, and my lawyer was certain that we would win. But suddenly everything changed. Susie announced a bombshell: she was pregnant. This discovery really caught me off guard. I had not expected it at all. Clearly, life had other plans for me and intended to hurt me even more. Susie and her lawyer asked me to put the divorce procedures on hold after hearing this news. They stated that we should strive to resolve matters for the sake of our child. Susie insisted on providing our child with a conventional family upbringing. I was taken aback and instantly responded, declaring that I no longer cared about her wishes and that this child could not be mine. Susie responded by arguing that she had never been intimate with anybody other than me. She highlighted that just because she had a sexual encounter with her male closest friend that night did not mean she could become pregnant from him. She continued to encourage me to think about what was best for our child and to fight for our marriage for the sake of the baby. But I refused to be influenced. I realized this was a desperate attempt to derail the divorce process and guilt-trip me into staying with her so she could continue to live a luxury lifestyle on my money. Susie was clearly grabbing at straws, but I stayed firm in my determination to leave the marriage. I remained steadfast, arguing that the divorce will continue as planned. I stated that when Susie gave birth, I would schedule a paternity test to determine whether the child was mine or not. However, Susie's lawyer refuted our case, arguing that because Susie was still legally married to me and had declared that she had not been intimate with anyone else, I was automatically the father of the kid. They stated that they would seek child support from me as a result of this. My lawyer vehemently disagreed, arguing that such allegations were baseless without a paternity test. Unfortunately, we were all too aware of the flaws in our judicial system, particularly when it came to defending men in cases like this. Susie's lawyer later sued me for child support, offering proof to back up their allegation that Susie had not been intimate with anyone else. They presented me as a controlling freak who attempted to avoid paying child support and accepting responsibility for my acts. They even called in witnesses to testify on Susie's behalf. My older sister, Na, was among the witnesses, which shocked me. I had no idea she would even be present. Initially, I figured she was there to observe and support me, but to my surprise, she testified against me, claiming that she had been friends with Susie for a long time and was confident that Susie could not have betrayed me by sleeping with someone else. My sister said Susie was still in love with me. Na claimed unequivocally that she believed the child belonged to me. Hearing my sister back my ex-wife over me was terrible. Na knew how much I loved Susie and how much she had wounded me, yet she was there to defend her deceptive behavior. Later, once we were out of court, I confronted my sister about her surprise testimony. I voiced my amazement and betrayal, feeling absolutely taken aback by her behavior. Na, on the other hand, stayed firm in her choice, saying that she was doing the right thing and that I would come to respect her stance in the future. I raised my voice, expressing my contempt and outrage at her for placing me in a position where I would have to pay child support for a child whose paternity had not yet been established. Na argued that I shouldn't be so harsh to an unborn child and that I should consider Susie's financial hardships if I didn't pay her alimony or child support. She told me that I would never comprehend her point of view since I did not have parental instincts like women. She persuaded me to see that covering the child's fees was the least I could do in this scenario. My sister's point of view left me feeling exploited and very uneasy. I couldn't understand how she could prioritize Susie's money demands over my emotional pain. My parents were also disappointed at my sister, telling Na that she had no right to testify against me. However, the harm was already done. My own sister testifying against me demonstrated to the court that Susie could be telling the truth and that I was attempting to avoid responsibility for our child. As a result, the court found in favor of my ex-wife, awarding her child support for me until the child turned 18. I was enraged and refused to accept the sentence, but despite our best efforts, my lawyer and I were unable to persuade the court. My divorce from Susie has been final for quite some time, and I have continued to pay child support for her kid on a monthly basis. Despite the fact that a paternity test proves that the child is not mine, he bears no resemblance to me. The truth is that because my ex-wife became pregnant while we were still married, the child is legally my responsibility. I'm now required to continue paying until he reaches the age of 18. This is why during this journey, my animosity toward my sister has grown stronger than it has toward my ex-wife. I totally blame Na for putting me in this situation. This is why, despite my parents' repeated requests to forgive her and move on, I have kept utter silence toward my sister and refused to acknowledge her presence at family functions. Everyone in the family appreciates and understands my position. Several cousins and relatives share my hate for Na, so they keep their distance from her. Na has repeatedly complained to our parents about how I have isolated her from the rest of the family. She defends her conduct by claiming that she did what she believed was best for the child. However, her attempts to elicit compassion have continued to fall on deaf ears, as the rest of the family realizes her folly and supports my decision. Nina married her longtime lover Joshua last year. Despite receiving an invitation to the wedding, I declined to go. My parents then told me that many other family members did not attend, which disappointed Na. She and her spouse spent some time after their marriage attempting to conceive. My parents had expressed to me their joy at the idea of finally having a grandchild from our family. I recently had to travel to a nearby town for a work conference organized by my company. Following the conference, my co-workers and I decided to unwind and relax at the hotel bar in our leisure time. Imagine my astonishment when I noticed my sister sitting with an elderly gentleman at the pub. She hadn't noticed me, and I kept it that way since I was curious about her appearance in a late-night club out of town, especially since she was married. I watched as she came in closer to the elderly man and murmured something into his ear that made him giggle. My suspicions intensified as they appeared to be flirting and acting unusually comfortable with each other. Without thinking about it, I reflexively reached for my phone and silently took a few photos. I took care to get clear images of my sister's and the older gentleman's faces, as I wanted incontrovertible confirmation of what I was seeing. As I saw them together at the bar, my mind raced with amazement and confusion. How could my married sister find herself in such a compromising situation? I watched in surprise as Na and the man continued their intimate talk, exchanging grins and laughter. After approximately an hour, the man motioned for Na to follow him to his room. She nodded and stood up to join him. My eyes widened as the truth of the scenario dawned on me and I realized I was seeing my sister prepare to cheat on her husband. I wanted to yell at her to stop, but from previous experience, I knew that cheats never learn from their mistakes. Instead, they must be given a lesson. After returning home, I decided to contact her husband, Joshua, personally. I believed it was necessary for him to know the truth rather than being caught off guard like I was. I located him on Facebook and made him a friend request, hoping he'd accept. After a few hours, I checked and discovered that he had accepted my request, so I instantly messaged him. In the message, I introduced myself as Nina's brother and stated that we needed to have an important chat. I requested him not to tell my sister about my text to him and gave him my phone number so he could contact me. I hoped he'd listen to what I had to say and waited impatiently for his call. A few minutes later, he called to ask why I had contacted him. He stated that he was already aware of me through Na and my parents, but was astonished that I had contacted him after all this time. I apologized to him for missing their wedding and expressed my concern that we were speaking under such circumstances. He then inquired what was wrong, and I honestly described what I had witnessed in the hotel between Noah and the older gentleman. I hesitated from immediately using the word cheating, because I wasn't sure if Na and he had an open marriage or not, and I didn't want to make assumptions. However, as I recounted the events to Joshua, he began probing with various questions regarding Na's attire and who the other man was, indicating obvious discomfort. To back up my story, I said that I had taken photographs of her with the gentleman, as I found it difficult to believe myself. I immediately shared those photographs with him to provide actual proof of what I had experienced. He was clearly moved by the revelation of Nina's infidelity and was wrestling with the seriousness of the situation. After a lengthy pause, he suddenly expressed gratitude for my candor and asked why I would go out of my way to assist him, given that we were virtually strangers and I no longer had a relationship with Na. His query struck a chord, prompting me to share my own experience, explaining how I had been in his shoes when my ex-wife cheated on me. As I probed more into the circumstances, I explained how Na had exacerbated my agony by testifying against me, resulting in my current burden of paying child support for a child who was not even mine. Joshua remained quiet for a few minutes after hearing my story. He then revealed that Na told him an entirely different version of the truth. Susie and my marriage, she claimed, were already faltering. And we had ceased being affectionate, prompting Susie to make a one-time error that allegedly led to our split. I was furious after hearing this distortion of truth, and I explained to Joshua that Susie had cheated on me twice, demonstrating that our divorce was not the result of a single error, but of her continually breaking my trust with her male buddy. To my relief, Joshua believed me and appreciated my candor in exposing my sister's dishonest actions. He informed me that he had no intention of staying with a cheating partner and planned to discuss this with Nina. In the days that followed, my parents regularly called to accuse me of wrecking Nina's life, since she was going through a divorce. They accused me of intruding unduly in her marriage and voiced disappointment at not being able to have a grandchild from her. Following this, I did not hold back in the dispute. I refuted their claims by explaining that it was not my responsibility that their daughter was unfaithful in her marriage. I suggested that instead of focusing on the prospect of having a grandchild, they should concentrate on teaching my sister better values and morals so she might become a better person. Na also sent me a derogatory text, accusing me of being a bitter young boy who couldn't keep his nose out of other people's business. She even said that Susie's infidelity during my marriage was legitimate, and that I deserved everything that had occurred to me. Her message enraged me, and it took me several hours to calm down after reading it. However, fate appeared to have its own way of balancing things, as I recently discovered that Na is presumably pregnant. She claims Joshua is the father, but he refuses to accept any responsibility. Joshua has contacted me, requesting that I testify for him when the case eventually goes to court, as I was the one who took those incriminating photos of Na and the other man. I accepted without hesitation. Not only to exact revenge on my sister, but also out of sympathy for Joshua. I do not want another man to go through the anguish and betrayal that I did with my ex-wife. Since then, my parents and Nina have persistently pressed me not to testify for Joshua. They continue to emphasize that family comes first. I can't help but find their sentiments amusing, especially since Na didn't emphasize family when it came to me. I am determined to teach my sister a lesson and guarantee that her husband does not meet the same fate as I did. Update 1. I'm shocked at how polarized everyone's reactions to my post are. I can't believe a few women are attempting to persuade me to support my sister, even though she has blatantly cheated. I say, shame on you. Believe me, I would have had no issues if my ex-wife had requested child support after demonstrating that the child was mine. But she didn't. She knew the child wasn't mine because we weren't even intimate at the time. As a result, she willfully forced me to accept responsibility for it because she couldn't pay it on her own. I couldn't show that she had intimate connections with that other guy because there was no evidence other than the text I discovered. As a result, I despise my sister Na for deceiving me and testifying for my ex-wife. However, now that Na is also manipulating her husband, I will not stand for it. I will testify against her and ensure that Joshua does not suffer the same fate. If it is discovered after the child is born that Joshua is the father, I am confident that he will step forward because he appears to be a lovely guy. But, until that is confirmed, why should a husband be required to pay child support when his wife has clearly been sleeping with other men? Na has expressed no guilt for her infidelity or for being the cause of her marriage's dissolution. Unlike my marriage, Joshua and Nina do not have a prenuptial agreement, which means he may be required to pay her alimony. On top of that, I feel he should not be required to pay child support for a child who is not his. I believe I'm doing the right thing, and I'm pleased that the majority of the comments support my decision. Update 2. It's been a long time since I posted anything here. Today, I testified against my sister in court. I described what I had seen her do with the older man, showing all of the proof and images. I could feel my sister's angry stare on me the entire time, but I remained determined. Despite her lawyer's attempts to discredit my testimony by suggesting I harbored a grudge against my sister, the judge accepted its credibility. I hope my testimony has a favorable impact on Joshua's case and that he is not required to pay child support, but the conclusion remains to be seen. In the midst of it all, my relationship with my parents has deteriorated. My mother called me, her voice strangled with tears, after learning that I had followed through on my pledge to testify against my sister. She was plainly disappointed, telling me that she and my father hoped I wouldn't do such a thing to my sister. As I listened, I couldn't help but become frustrated. I reminded her that they had never battled for me so hard when my sister had done the same thing to me during my divorce, and that they had even forgiven her for everything. Yet here she was calling me a letdown and wailing as if my troubles and pains were insignificant in comparison to my sister's. I informed my mother that it was unfair for them to chastise me for standing up for what was right and expressing the truth, especially because they had previously failed to support me. It seemed like a betrayal, and I made it obvious that I did not need them or my father in my life if they were going to favor my unfaithful sister over me. Since then, I've stopped talking to my parents and refused to answer their calls or respond to their messages. Update 3. I am returning with an update on my sister's predicament. I'm happy to say that Joshua has been exonerated of paying child support to my sister. I'm sure Na is upset. I can't help but feel relieved knowing that at least one person was spared the unjust weight that so many others, including myself, have had to bear. To clarify a few more points. No, I don't have a relationship with Susie's son, even though I still pay child support. If the son grows up and contacts me, I will not hesitate to tell him the truth about his mother. Yes, my parents and I are still not communicating. And to be honest, I have felt much lighter and more comfortable since they stopped contacting me every other day and blaming me for not supporting my sister. Nah, she won't dare confront me since I'm sure she's still embarrassed that I testified against her. Also, yes, she will receive alimony from Joshua as we expected. No, my parents do not have a relationship with Susie's son because they know he is not my child. I'm not sure if they'll accept Nina's child, but maybe they will. That is all. I've worked hard for 17 years to support my family, only to discover my wife's betrayal and that some of my kids aren't mine. Original post. Hi, I'll try to keep this short. Both in our 30s and have been together 17 years. I male 30s and am the sole provider for my family of 6, partner and 4 kids. 2 high-energy dogs. I work 5 days a week and sometimes work on weekends if we need a little more cash. My partner is a SHM and hasn't worked since our eldest was born. By her own choice. I wake up at 5 a.m. and take the dogs out. Prepare kids' lunches, snacks, ensure all school essentials such as bags etc. are at the front door, then head to work in a physically demanding job. Kids are picked up for daycare, school at 7. Due to after-school activities and clubs etc. they're not home until 6. I come home at 7 and make dinner most nights. Help with homework, do bath time for the little ones, do dishes, take dogs out for a longer walk again. Put little ones in bed if the house is a mess. I will of course clean it. I pay for everything. Mortgage, bills, insurance, groceries, clothes, toys, technology, after-school activities, dates, a woman to deep clean the house once a month. My partner wants to go on a 2-week-long vacation with her friends which will overlap with the weekend away I had planned with my brother who I rarely get to see as we live so far away. She wants me to cancel my trip as she's tired and needs a break. We got into an argument over it in which unkind things were said on both sides, but I am unwilling to budge on this. How do I get through to her that I need some rest? TLDR. I pay for everything, do housework, childcare etc. while my wife is a SAHM. She wants to go on a 2-week-long vacation with her friends which means I won't be able to go on a weekend trip with my brother which was planned well in advance. We argued in which she told me I need to help out more and I basically said what's in the title. How do I get through to her? Edit/additional info. Hello all, sorry I haven't replied to many comments, but I have read most of them. I've seen a couple questions I'd like to answer and figured that making a post would be better than replying to individual comments. My children are between 16 and 6. My wife doesn't take anyone to their clubs/activities. Younger children's school finishes at 3 p.m. Their clubs are in the school. Older kids' school finishes at 3:30. They stay in a club until 4:30 and then go to a youth group with their cousins until they come home. My eldest makes their way to and from school on their own while my youngest is picked up and dropped off. Kids are of course able to eat breakfast at home, but often enjoy eating with their friends before school starts at 8. My wife doesn't walk the dogs because she doesn't like to, and frankly, they don't like her. I enjoy my time walking the dogs because it allows me some time to think. We have a large yard with dog houses, toys and some agility equipment for them to use while I'm gone. They also get mental stimulation through Kongs and puzzle toys which have been prepared and stored in the freezer. What does my wife do all day? Honestly, she's not isolated. She often tells me of things she's done with her friends, sister, mother, etc. She goes to the gym, does and enjoys hobbies such as embroidery, knitting and some jewelry design. She changes what she likes to do, says it keeps things fresh. Housework-wise, she does the laundry. I fold and distribute later. She will give dogs water and prepared meals. Enrichment. We have those robot vacuums and air purifiers to deal with the dog hair, but my wife will vacuum if heated. I wipe the countertops, put dishes in the dishwasher after meals. Older kids take care of their own rooms, bathrooms for an allowance. Have you ever not truly noticed something until it's right in front of your face? I was so mad because I wanted to go see my brother and she wanted to go on vacation with her friends. Yes, she wants me to pay for it. And things have been like this for so long that I didn't see how unfair and imbalanced things were until I truly started to look at how our duties were distributed. You've all given me a lot to think about. I'll answer some comments later. Update 1. Some of you have suggested that I enable her behavior and I'd like to address it, to explain how things got this way to begin with. My wife worked from age 16 to 20, but I'd often come home after work during the early stages of her pregnancy and she would tell me of how bad the morning sickness had been and how she was getting in trouble at work for being late or not turning up due to the issues she was having. One night, after a long discussion about things, she suggested that it would be easier and better for her and the baby if she stayed home during the pregnancy. I was reluctant at first because we weren't exactly swimming in cash, but ultimately the health of my wife and child were more important than a few months of added stress. To save money, we moved in with my wife's older sister and her husband. We split rent and utilities, but we're still saving some money. The pregnancy wasn't easy on her. She was often cranky and uncomfortable and as a result could be quite mean, rude and a bit handsy. So after further discussions with my wife and her sisters, I took on more of the household duties such as cooking, etc. When my eldest was born, my wife's sister helped with childcare while I was at work for the first year, but after she and my wife had a fight when he was about a year old, we moved into our own place. But my wife struggled during the day when I wasn't there to help, so we ultimately decided to put him in another daycare facility. I would drop him off on my way to work and would pick him up on my way back home when I finished. Once home, one of us would cook dinner while the other watched the baby. Back then we had no pets, so household duties weren't too much and could be handled by a couple hours cleaning on Saturday or Sunday when we could split it between us both. When my son was 3, my wife's sister offered to get her a job where she worked. My wife had to do an interview, but my SIL was confident she'd get the position. My wife was reluctant and nervous about returning to work, but attended the interview and was offered the job. I don't remember much of our celebrations that night, but it ended in the conception of our second child. My wife told me when she'd been at her new job for just over a month. She stuck it out for a couple more weeks, but was fired due to not turning up for shifts. I asked one of her doctors about the issues she was having so early in the pregnancy, back pain, leg pain, nausea, etc., but my wife cut me off before I could finish and asked me to leave the room. When we got home, she berated me for speaking to her doctor like she was a child and told me that if she wants something brought up to her doctor regarding her pregnancy, that she'd do it herself. I had embarrassed her because she knew her body and knew what was normal and what wasn't. I still thought the issues had to be addressed with her doctor, but whenever I brought it up her mood swings would get worse. My meal came to live with us when my second was born for a short while when I returned to work after my paternity leave. When my daughter was about 4 months old, my wife expressed that she was having difficulty looking after her by herself during the day, but my Mill, who had her own life and responsibilities, couldn't come back and stay indefinitely. We had a 2-bedroom apartment then and having her sleep on the couch didn't seem fair to me. So we enrolled my daughter in daycare while my son was at nursery. My son went to daycare after nursery as well, so I'd pick them both up around 6 p.m. and head home. My wife promised she would speak to her doctor about the possibility of depression, etc., and her mood did improve with the additional help with the children. My wife took on cooking and cleaning duties then, but struggled as well. I would often come home to burned, ruined food, and would need to make something else anyway. So I ended up cooking dinner most nights so we wouldn't be wasting food. During a weekend away for a friend's wedding, When my daughter was 5, I suggested that my wife go back to work. Both kids were in school now, and I thought we could improve our lifestyle with 2 incomes. We had recently bought a house because the apartment was too small for us and the children needed their own rooms. She seemed hesitant, which I understood after being out of work for so long, but she agreed. She applied for several positions but had no luck with interviews or callbacks. We found out she was pregnant with our third not long after that, and returning to work was put on hold again. The pregnancy was difficult as expected, but again my mill came to stay when I had to return to work. She stayed for a while but had to return to her own home eventually. Before she left, my wife told me that she feared she would struggle with our second daughter just as she had the first 2. I tried to reassure her, but she seemed to become insanely depressed the second her mother left. I would return home with the 8 and 5-year-old to a screaming baby and nothing done around the house. Her mood and actions affected the entire house. So reluctantly I put her second daughter in daycare as well, but I told my wife she had to talk to her doctor and that we'd no longer be having any more children. She was, and we had a huge fight about it. But I got a vasectomy and she accepted it. We've always used protection. My wife is on birth control and I always use condoms, but given that it had already failed twice for us, when my first was conceived after my 21st I was so drunk I don't think I wore one, our second after celebrating her new job, and our third at our friend's wedding. I didn't want it to happen again. But obviously the universe had other plans for us, and our third daughter was born 2 years after our second when we were celebrating a promotion I'd gotten at work. Obviously this is a brief summary of events, and there have been several other moments through the years when I've suggested she go back to work, but I thought I'd try to provide further background for those who are curious about how we got to where we are. Someone asked if my wife has had a break recently. She has never taken 2 weeks away before, but she goes away a couple of times every year for weekend trips with family and friends. The longest she has been gone is a week. In regards to the dogs and why they don't like her, she doesn't like them. She thinks the mental stimulation I provide through Kong toys, games, puzzles etc. is unnecessary, but freaks out if their energy levels are too high. One is a German Shepherd which I was gifted for my birthday, and the other is a German Shepherd Malinois mix my wife brought home because she thought our GSD needed a friend. Yes, they have been to training and were originally in doggy daycare for the first couple years. On to the update. Update 2. So, as one of you suggested, I took a day off of work. I genuinely wasn't feeling too good either, but I intended to speak to my wife about the situation while the children were at school. Kids all left for school by 7-ish. My wife came downstairs at 11:45 and seemed very shocked to see me. She asked what I was doing at home and I explained I took a sick day as I wasn't feeling well. The first words out of her mouth were, "But we need the money, you don't look that bad." I made a face, and she quickly asked what was wrong and asked if she could get me anything. I asked for water and we sat on the couch, but soon her phone rang and she went off into the kitchen to talk. She came back a while later and asked if I wanted to get something to eat, and I said we could make something from the kitchen. She said she wanted to go out and I said we could order takeout, but I wasn't in the mood to go out. The dogs had been sitting by the chest freezer waiting in the pantry for their lunchtime enrichment for 10 minutes now, and I asked if she was going to feed them. She flopped onto the couch and asked me to get it. I said no. She asked again, and I said no, again. She glared at me, but eventually got up and gave it to them. She asked me to take her out again several times, and I kept saying no. I was starting to get a migraine, which I told her, but she kept asking, suggesting we could go shopping, she could get her nails done and we could enjoy the day together. I refused, said we had something to talk about, and she said we would then go upstairs. She came back down 40 minutes later dressed up and said if I wasn't going to take her out, she'd go herself. I tried to get her to sit down so we could talk, but she blew me a kiss at the door and rushed outside without even locking it. While she was out, I took some of your advice and canceled the cleaning lady we have. I apologized to her, as I really did like her, but she was very understanding and I think we parted on good terms. She returned home at 8 p.m. and immediately asked where dinner was. I told her the kids and I had already eaten. She asked where her dinner was and I told her she'd have to make something for herself. She said she'd just order something and I told her no. This gave her pause and she looked at me like I'd just told her she had to starve. She said she couldn't cook and so told her I know she's perfectly capable of making something. We have plenty of food, it's not like she has to be Gordon Ramsay to stick a tin of soup or something on the stove. She left again, and returned 30 minutes later with McDonald's for herself, which set the younger kids off. Yes, they'd already eaten, but she walked in the door finishing her burger and drink with an empty bag and McFlurry tub. Our youngest asked why she didn't bring her any ice cream and my wife said Daddy said I wasn't allowed to. I did not say this, and I swear it took more strength than I'd like to admit not to yell at her in front of our daughter. When the kids were in bed, I asked her to sit and talk about the situation regarding our trips. She asked if I'd rescheduled with my brother and I firmly told her no and that I wouldn't be. I tried to have a conversation. I explained I felt our duties were incredibly uneven and that I'd like for her to take on more responsibilities with the children and the house. She argued that she does enough and I asked her to make a list. She put laundry down, feeding the dogs, making doctor's appointments and grocery shopping. And I brought out my own list with everything I've told you guys so far and added that I created the dogs' meals. She simply has to give it to them. I fold and distribute laundry, take kids to doctor's appointments and that the groceries are ordered through an app on her phone, delivered to the house and I put them away. She got up then. I asked what she was doing and she said she was going upstairs. I didn't argue. I didn't want it to resolve an argument and wake the kids up. She was visibly shaking with anger. A while later I went upstairs as well. She was on the phone to someone and when I entered the room she demanded I leave and go sleep on the couch. I refused and climbed into bed. She hung up the phone and demanded again that I sleep on the couch and again I refused. She grabbed me and physically tried to drag me out. That resulted in a fight and I ended up sleeping on the couch because she was going to wake the kids up again. The following days were much the same. I have stopped folding and putting away her laundry. I do it for myself and the younger kids and my two oldest take their piles and put them away themselves. I still cook for the kids, but have told my wife that she has to make her own meals. Petty, I know. I think my eldest heard us arguing because he asked if he could take the dogs out for a couple walks with his friend during the week. He hazes, and he says he's enjoying it, but I think he and my wife had an argument the other day because he's been very distant with her and things just feel off. He's asked me about 3 times if I love him, or of course I've told him there is nothing he could ever do to make me not. Yes, I've tried to talk to him about it, but he doesn't want to talk yet and I need to respect that. I think pushing him could be a mistake. Thursday night my wife asked if we could have a drink as I had to leave on Friday to see my brother. I had one but honestly it went right to my head and honestly just wanted to sleep. She kept trying to initiate sex, but I wasn't in the mood. I woke up Friday morning and my wife was gone. So was her suitcase. I've texted and called but there's been no answer other than a text telling me we'd talk about it when she's back. She ignored me and went on her trip regardless and I am furious. I have left her some cash in the bank account. She has the card too, but have removed everything else into another account. I had to tell my brother why I wouldn't be coming to see him, and he arrived here on Saturday with my nephew and 2 nieces. The house is very full, but honestly it feels more open than it has in a long time. The kids seem relaxed and so do the dogs. I don't know what will happen with my wife, but I am done. I can't afford a lawyer right now and unfortunately I don't know anyone who could give me a deal or do me a favor, but this marriage is over. It should have been a long time ago TLDR. Wife and I talked, had an argument, she went on trip regardless and my brother is here with his family. This sub only allows 1 update, so if I post anything further it will be on my own profile. Relevant comments. OOP on if his wife might have undiagnosed health problems including PPD. OOP. I spoke to her doctor about the issues she was having because she would not. He asked her what was happening, how she was and she would say the pregnancy was fine. She was having no issues yet at home all I got was how hard things were, how ill she felt, how sore she was. Screaming, yelling at me. I went to bed because I am 6.5 and work a physically and mentally demanding job. It is not good for my body to sleep on a 2-seater couch. I wanted to sleep as I had work in the morning. She escalated and got physical, not me. She made the argument worse, not me. Undiagnosed PPD? She has been to her doctor who had diagnosed her with nothing. She told me so herself, and as for me knocking her up, it takes 2 people to create a child. We do not live in America and my wife is pro-choice. If she wants to terminate, she has the ability to do so. I told her after our second was born that I didn't think having more kids was a good idea, and she insisted. I said the same thing after our third and after my vasectomy and she lost her mind. Let her go on vacation and feel like herself for the first time in forever. Did she not feel like herself when she went on multiple weekends away last year with her friends? Does she not feel like herself when she's hanging with the girls for lunch dates throughout the month? Do you know the last time I saw my brother in person? Before the pandemic. He is here to support me. If you want my wife to go on vacation so I can't, then it's perfectly reasonable that my brother can come to the home I pay for when I need him. Are you my wife? Update 3. I'm not going to add this to the post as it's already long enough. Please excuse any spelling mistakes as I'm so tired. Thank you all, but I'm not in America. I know a lot of you have suggested I message her telling her I'm going to divorce her, etc., but I think I'm going to play it cool, act like I've accepted her decision so she's not on guard. I know she said something to my son, but he won't tell me what it is, and I feel like if I push him to he might not ever, but my nephew and him are hanging out a lot. They're close despite not seeing each other much, so I'm hoping he might confide in him and maybe open up. I'm not just letting this go. We will talk, but I don't want to push him too much. I am not a lightweight. I can drink. But I have been exhausted, and I mean very exhausted for some time now, and I think that maybe that's why I passed out after having one drink, but I would be lying to myself and to you if I said I wasn't suspicious. I am suspicious a lot now. I swear, I'm not an idiot, but I really feel like one now. Some of you have suggested that I get the kids' DNA tested, especially my youngest, and while I know that this is likely something I'll have to do, it breaks my heart to think that they're not mine. My girls all look the same, just older versions of each other, so if I have to DNA test the youngest, I have to do them all. I never wanted kids. This is why I've always used condoms. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I love my own. I love these kids, regardless of the DNA test. They are mine, but I fear if it comes back that they're not. It could damage our relationship. My brother has read my posts and spent the last days telling me everything he hates about my wife, obviously not in front of the kids. He's pretty funny, and I feel like I haven't been able to laugh like this in a long time. He says he's going to make a Reddit account. Lord knows what he'll say. Writing this update has opened my eyes further. I see how the timing of wanting her to go back to work leans up with each pregnancy, but when these things are years apart, and you're concentrating on supporting the family and work, your brain sometimes pushes these thoughts away until something triggers them again, and boom, you're slapped in the face with the realization that your entire relationship is potentially built on a mountain of lies. She has her phone and iPad with her, so I can't check any of that. But I'm going to be going through her stuff. Is it in envisioning privacy? Likely. Do I care right now? No. I feel like I've wasted the majority of my life, the good years, and that feels horrible to say when I have 4 kids. I promise I don't mean that they're a waste. As I said in the post, this marriage is over. I am done. My kids deserve better, but I won't be alone when I confront her. As I said, she can get handsy, and no, I have never retaliated, and I don't want to be put into a position where I need to. I thank you all for your comments, your insight, your kindness. I know I haven't replied to many comments at all, but don't really have time to do so when there are so many, but I am trying to respond to DMs as that seems like the easier thing to do. I want to ask my Sil what actually happened with my wife and that job. But I don't want her to know I'm suspicious. My Sil is a kind woman, but she is my wife's sister, so her loyalties lay with her, I suppose, and I don't want to alert my soon-to-be ex. Does anyone have any ideas how I can do this? Seems odd to bring up a job my wife had for a very brief time years ago. I wish you all the best. Relevant comments. OOP on the accusations for not respecting his wife's needs and wants. OOP, how do I not respect her needs, wants? I pay for everything and do the majority of the child, pet care and housework. I have not gone on vacation in years because I was providing for my family. I have given her everything she's wanted for the past 17 years, and she couldn't give me a weekend with my brother. Why couldn't we both go on vacation? Because I don't randomly have the money to fund 2 weeks away for her. I can't just up and leave my 16-year-old to look after 3 younger kids and 2 high-energy dogs. I couldn't take them with me because that would mean multiple plane tickets and accommodations, food, etc. for them, as well as dog sitting, boarding for the dogs. New update. Hello all, I'm sorry it's taken so long to update. Things are not good. While this update will be small, I will try to do a longer one when things are a little better. Yes, we are separated and will be getting a divorce. My FIL has graciously offered to help. It's taken me so long to update because, as most of you already knew, some of the children aren't mine. My eldest son is mine, my 3 daughters are not. I found out not long after my first update. And while I thought I could handle the news clearly, my body couldn't, and I had a heart attack. Thankfully, my brother was with me and called an ambulance. I am recovering, but Jesus Christ scared the shite out of me and my family. As some of you may remember, when my ex left for vacation, I took the majority of the money out of the account she used, but left some as I didn't want to leave her stranded. That money, about 500 or so, was gone in a few days. She used her own money that she's been making from OnlyFans to fund her trip. Yes, I'm serious. She has only a fan account. My son had offered to take the dogs out for me during his lunch/free class time and walked in on his mother making content. In the living room. She told him that I wasn't making enough money for the family to survive and that she had to be the only fan to help support us. She told him I was ashamed and embarrassed and that I would be very unhappy and hurt if he mentioned it. She told him that doing so could ruin our marriage and could lead us to divorce. My in-laws know everything, as my brother had to call them to help watch my kids while I was in the hospital. My FIL is furious and my MIL is just devastated. She keeps apologizing to me, like she's the one who betrayed me. My ex moved out. She tried to make me leave so she could stay in the house with the kids, but after a conversation with her father she's renting a place. My eldest daughter and my son know the girls aren't mine. My ex told them after they said they didn't want to go live with her at her new place. My mill was with them at the time and according to my daughter, began screaming at my wife for her behavior. My youngest two don't know yet. But they will. This isn't something I can keep from them forever. They already know that something is up. I've cut my hours back at work and have been able to work from home. It's obviously a desk job for now, but I am thankful to my boss for working with me on this. I came home to find out that my mill and one of my sills had cleared out my wife's hobby space and made it an office den for me. I am very grateful for their support during this. I know it can and be easy to take the side of your daughter, sister's ex-partner during a breakup, but I appreciate them. While things aren't great by any stretch of the imagination, I feel strange. Things seem calmer without my ex in the house. There seems to be more laughter around, and even the dogs appear more at ease. But I am so angry, which obviously isn't good for my heart. I've wasted a huge chunk of my life raising kids that aren't mine in a marriage that was messed up from the beginning. Now please, don't take what I said as me saying I regret my girls. I don't at all. They are smart, beautiful, cheeky little weirdos in love with all of my heart. But the betrayal stings. The fact that I've been working my ass off for years and she's been making thousands on OnlyFans and been keeping it to herself stings. I am ashamed, humiliated, embarrassed, angry, relieved. It's a mess of emotions in my head. But I know I'll get through it. Hopefully, I need to for my kids and dogs. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer in the comments. I, 29M. Think that my girlfriend, 26F, is only with me because she can't be with her best friend, 26M. Should I just end the relationship? Sorry for the long post, I didn't realize how much I had to say until I got it all typed out. Thanks in advance to anyone who reads all this. I've been with my girlfriend Jordan for a little over 2 years, we live together and we have 2 cats. Up until this weekend I genuinely thought everything was perfect in our relationship, which I know is what everyone says in these posts, but I really was thinking that I was going to ask her to marry me sometime in the next year. We don't ever get into arguments. Jordan is very sweet and easygoing and normally we just mesh well on everything. Honestly, if everything in our relationship hadn't been so good up until now I probably would have just broken up with her this weekend. But because things have truly been so perfect I'm not sure if maybe I'm jumping to the wrong conclusion about what to do because my feelings got hurt. The other person who's important in this story is Jordan's friend Mark. She's known Mark for their whole lives because they both grew up in the same small religious community. Jordan isn't part of that religion anymore. She decided to leave the church when she was I think 19 and moved to the state that we live in now. Mark still is in the religion and apparently takes it really seriously. I'm told he now works for the church back in Jordan's hometown. Also, as far as I know, Mark is the only person from the religious community that Jordan still talks to besides her parents, which I'm mentioning because I now think it could be a red flag. So on Saturday I met Mark for the first time because he was in our city and Jordan wanted us all to have dinner together. At this point I want to say, I will admit that when we were first dating, I found out that Jordan had a best friend who was a guy I didn't really like, especially because it seemed like they were on FaceTime with each other a lot. But since it was a childhood friend and they mostly didn't see each other in person, I just trusted Jordan that Mark was only a friend and didn't let it bother me, and eventually I got over it. So when we were going to dinner, I wasn't jealous or suspicious of Mark at all. If anything, I was somewhat excited to finally be meeting him since I've been hearing about him for 2 years. But then the way Jordan and Mark acted at dinner is what convinced me that there's something going on there other than just being best friends. I honestly don't even know how to describe it except to say that I've never seen 2 people act more obviously like they were in love with each other. They literally would not stop touching each other. They were constantly touching each other's arms and shoulders, and at some points they were actually even holding hands. They completely left me out of the conversation and were laughing about inside jokes, and every time they'd laugh they'd do this thing where they put their foreheads together, or that was when they'd be holding hands. And then also they were just looking at each other in a way that I didn't feel comfortable with at all. It was honestly even worse than the touching. It just wasn't how anyone would look at somebody they're supposedly just friends with. I'm 100% sure that every stranger looking at our table thought that Jordan and Mark were the couple and that I was her brother or something. I felt like a third wheel the whole time, and Jordan didn't even notice how awkward she was making it for me because she was way too focused on Mark and all the attention she was getting from him. And that's really not like Jordan at all. Usually she's a lot more considerate and would notice immediately if I wasn't having a good time or if she was accidentally being rude and excluding someone at the table. So it was genuinely really jarring to be sitting there with her and Mark and basically feeling like I didn't know my girlfriend at all. It was like he turned her into a completely different person who didn't even care that I was alive. So finally at one point when Jordan got up to go to the bathroom, I just said to Mark, "So are you into my girl or what's going on here?" Mark: "Nothing's going on at all. That ship sailed a long time ago." Me: "What does that mean? Did you guys date at some point?" Mark: "No, we never did. And then when she left the church, we both knew it meant that we were never going to. And we've accepted being in each other's lives as friends. There's nothing else going on at all." Me: "That makes it sound like the only reason you're not together is because she left the church." And all Mark did was shrug. Me: "Well, what if she came back to the church? Would you marry her?" Mark: "Oh, she's not going to do that. You might as well ask what would happen if a bicycle had 6 tires." And so then when Jordan came back to the table, Mark said to her, "OP wants to know if we'd be married if you weren't a godless heathen." Jordan: "Why did you two call your mom while I was gone?" And then she and Mark both just laughed about it and changed the subject. So because of dinner and that conversation and everything else that I've written about in this post, I really feel like Jordan and Mark are in love with each other and not just best friends like they say. And the only reason they aren't together is because they can't compromise about their religion. I think Jordan thinks that because she's okay with that decision, she expects me to be okay with being her second choice, and in the meantime she's actually secretly wanting to be with Mark. So that makes me think that I should probably obviously just have self-respect and break up with her, because I shouldn't be in a relationship with someone who would rather be with somebody else. But then the problem for me is that our relationship has been so perfect and Jordan has always treated me so well except for this one night. The only time she's ever acted like this was on the one occasion that Mark was around in person. Normally even when she's talking to him all the time she's never made me feel this way. So on the one hand I'm wondering if maybe it doesn't matter what Jordan's feelings are for Mark, as long as he isn't going to be around it doesn't actually seem to affect our relationship. So maybe I just need to cool off and go back to trusting her that they are indeed only friends even if it seems to be true that they have complicated feelings for each other. Or should I just end things? Relevant comments. Or Michalski: "What did Jordan say about all this when you two got home and had a private discussion?" "We didn't talk about it again. I've just been trying to weigh things out on my own for the last few days. I wasn't sure how I should try to talk to her about it or if that was the best idea." In reply: "Cap does it. I mean, the only way forward at this point is to talk to your girlfriend. You need to sit down with her and have a frank discussion about the events of the night and what made you uncomfortable. How she responds to your concerns will tell you almost everything you need to know. The main thing I would be concerned about when starting the conversation is that your girlfriend seems like she might be quick to brush off any of your concerns without hearing them out. If she does that, you need to push back. Make it clear that you need to be heard on this issue and that she needs to take you seriously here. Then really, you just need to first of all tell her that you found a lot of her actions with Jordan to be not only inappropriate but hurtful to you. Establish boundaries as well. Be explicit, the hand-holding, pressing their foreheads up against one another, etc. All goes far beyond what best friends do with each other. I think your best bet is to mostly frame the conversation around that. What you do from there really depends on how your girlfriend reacts to that. I can see it going one of two ways. This would be the ideal situation, but maybe she genuinely did not realize what she was doing in that environment. She was in a weird church cult for what seems like a decent chunk of her life. It's possible that she sees that behavior as normal and not at all concerning. That doesn't excuse the behavior, but it could go a long way to alleviate your concerns. She goes on the defensive and claims you are exaggerating what happened. You're just being jealous. That's just how their relationship is. I'd say that if she immediately responds with being defensive, then that tells you more or less all you need to know. Either way though, you need to talk to her and she needs to understand that her actions were inappropriate. It might be tempting to sweep it under the rug if she tries to laugh it off. After all, how often are you really going to be interacting with this Mark * person anyway? But if you're really considering a long-term thing with this girl, you need to think in the long term. Say you do get married to this girl, you really want to fully commit yourself to someone who you believe would drop you for someone else in a heartbeat. Thanks for this comment. This gives me a lot of good stuff to think about. A couple of people have mentioned that her behavior around Mark might have a different context than I thought because of how they grew up. Not that that means I should let it go and not tell her that it bothered me, but that maybe she didn't realize that it doesn't seem normal and maybe it's not as much as a sign of something as I thought. So I might start by just bringing up to her, I think that could be a good idea. There are comments on how inappropriate GF's behavior was. Ali_cat 222. I may get some hate for this, but I am a F whose best friend is a guy and I don't even do more than give him a quick hug before we part after hanging out. That may just be me, but I couldn't imagine holding hands and touching foreheads together, especially if my SO was there if I had one. How does growing up with someone equate to needing to hold hands, touching forearms, etc.? To me that comes off as disrespectful. Now having said that though, I do believe the best thing to do is talk to her. Ignoring it won't get you anywhere, and I will admit that the way I may view things doesn't mean that's the way she viewed it, nor necessarily was trying to be flirtatious either. The only way to work through things in a relationship is letting your partner know how you feel in situations. If you don't discuss things that you may be feeling uncomfortable with, you won't have a good continual foundation for your relationship otherwise. I wish you all the best and hope you can work things out. Rezua R. Touching foreheads and holding hands? I mean, the rest of it is over the line but maybe excusable in some way. But this? I don't know how you didn't say something when it happened. It just seems so bizarre to me for friends to do that. There has to be something more. It just doesn't make any sense otherwise, no matter how you try and view it. Maybe they think of each other as the one that got away. Maybe some kind of tragedy. Romeo and Juliet. Right person, wrong circumstances kind of thing. What I really think is that at the least, this will happen every time Mark makes an appearance in your lives. And at worst you'll always be second to him, whether he's there or not. Aliando Elise. My jaw dropped when I read that, for real. Nora Ray J. Same, I could not imagine being OP at that moment. It would make me cry if my partner did that to me. Sidri. She obviously carries a torch that will never go out. If knowing your runner-up is something you can live with, give it a shot. But 2 years isn't long and there's a lot of years left. If something changes later and an opportunity opens up, she'd go running. If something changes later and an opportunity opens up, she'd go running. That's the big thing that scares me, because I do think that I could maybe live with the fact that there was someone else before me and that she eventually did choose me over him. But then I think about what could happen if Mark decided that he was ever going to leave the church like Jordan did. Which doesn't seem like it's going to happen from the way they both talk about it, but then I know that I'm a different person now at 29 than I was when I was 26, so it's not impossible for him to change his mind. And then if that really was the only reason that Jordan was with me, of course she'd leave to go be with him like what she always wanted. First update. 2 days later. I talked to Jordan on Wednesday night. The TLDR update to the situation is that I didn't break up with her. After we talked about everything, I feel like that would be too much of an overreaction for what's actually going on. I do still think I was right to be upset about what I saw happening at dinner on Saturday, and Jordan didn't disagree with me about that. But I think I did jump to the wrong conclusion that it meant that she secretly actually wanted to be with Mark more than she wanted to be with me. Now that we've talked it out, I don't think there's a reason to end what's otherwise the best relationship I've ever had, and I'm glad that I didn't just immediately trust my instincts, because there was more going on with the situation that I didn't really understand that Jordan has since told me, and now I do feel like she can be given some grace in this situation, assuming nothing like this ever happens again. So thanks for the advice, especially for everyone who told me to just talk to her before I made a big decision. So when we talked, I decided to take the main piece of advice that I got from everyone and start by telling Jordan that my feelings were hurt by the way she treated me at dinner with Mark, and then see how the conversation went from there. It turned into a very long talk, so I don't want to try to remember exact quotes and get them wrong, but here are the important things. I repeated to Jordan some of what I wrote in the post and said that I felt excluded by her and Mark, especially because they were being overly touchy-feely with each other to the point where it made me uncomfortable. Jordan seemed surprised, like she didn't even notice that she and Mark were touching each other that much, but then she thought about it and said that I was right and apologized. She said that Mark is always really touchy with everybody and not just her, I asked, and so she didn't even think about it, but that she wished I would have said something at the time because she didn't realize they were being that obnoxious. I said that was part of what bothered me, because I thought that normally she would have noticed something like that, but she was acting so different around Mark and not paying any attention to anything else, including how I was feeling, that it was honestly just made me question which one of us she cared about more, or if she cared about him as more than just a friend. Jordan apologized more and said that she could understand why it would look that way to me, but that she loves me and cares more about me than anyone else in the world, and that she didn't mean to act like that or make me feel that way. She said that she was trying to not make Mark feel like a third wheel because of being a single guy out with a couple, but obviously it backfired and just made me feel like the third wheel instead, which wasn't what she wanted to do either. After that, Jordan explained a lot to me about her history with Mark, and basically as she explained it, she said that she fully admits she cares about him as more than just a normal friend, but she says that it's not in a romantic way. She said that's why she always specifically refers to him as her best friend, and not just as her friend, and said that she would use the phrase "he's like my brother" if it weren't for the fact that she once had an actual brother, RIP, so she won't use that phrasing for anyone else. According to Jordan, the main thing that happened to make her and Mark so close was that when she was 17 she tried to kill herself. And that was actually when everyone else in the community stopped talking to her and Mark was the only person who didn't. For the next couple of years until she moved, he was literally her only friend, and she said that he checked on her every single day to make sure she stayed alive, which is also when they got into the habit of talking on the phone so much. And also apparently during this time Mark's parents thought they were dating and made a big deal about how they shouldn't be, and that's why she made that remark during dinner. Apparently calling Jordan a godless heathen is something that Mark's mom said. I did tell Jordan that Mark basically said to me that he thought the two of them would be married if she had stayed in the church, and I asked her if she thinks that maybe Mark is in love with her even if she doesn't feel the same way. She said definitely not, and I don't think she was being dishonest. I really don't agree with her, but I think she genuinely believes that Mark isn't into her in any way apart from friendship. Her opinion of the situation is that she also thinks she and Mark would eventually have gotten married if she had never left the church or moved. But from her perspective it would have been more because of peer pressure than anything else, and she doesn't think it would necessarily have been a good thing. She thinks Mark was just being honest about that, and that possibly from his perspective he thinks he and Jordan would have made a good couple, but he's probably thinking that because he's just assuming that in that scenario she'd be the perfect church wife, so there's no reason why they wouldn't be a good couple. But then the big thing that happened at the end of the conversation is that Jordan told me that Mark is coming back through our city on his way home from this trip. And so she was going to invite him to hang out with the two of us again, but she said that if I'm going to be uncomfortable with him around then she won't ask him. A lot of people were saying that if she didn't offer to cut contact with him or to cut down on contact with him, it meant that she valued him over me. So the fact that she brought up on her own that she wouldn't invite him to dinner with us again because I didn't like it seemed like a really good sign to me. Based on everything else that she said, I do understand why she didn't offer to totally stop being friends with him, and I wouldn't expect her to after what she told me about what happened when she was a teenager. So now I'm deciding to take Jordan's word for it that although she and Mark are weirdly close, it's for the reasons that she explained to me and not because she's in love with him. I think the fact that she was immediately apologetic instead of defensive was good, and the way she explained everything did make sense to me. I don't necessarily trust Mark, but I do think I can trust Jordan. But I am going to watch and see if it seems like she's still talking to him as much as she used to, or if anything changes or sounds different. I'm not going to be controlling and tell her that she can't talk to him or that she has to talk to him less, but I want to see if me talking to her about all of this causes her to act any differently at all. I'm kind of thinking she might realize on her own that the way Mark acts towards her actually does seem like he likes her more than a friend now that I've brought it up, but I don't know. It could be that things just go back to exactly the way they were before, and I won't know if anything has actually changed until the next time Mark is around in person, but I don't think that's something I should keep worrying about before it happens. Relevant comment signal_BlackBerry 326. Holding hands with your opposite sex friend and pushing your foreheads together in front of your monogamous partner is wild, but you do you homie Tamerlane_Tully. Well, Reddit, congratulations, we definitely accomplished nothing here. There's some sober pushback in the comments. OOP mostly stands his ground. Pixel_Spartan 117. OP, did she acknowledge that the touching by her was inappropriate? I do not see how she could not have recognized how touchy they were and her lack of physical touch with you. Like many others have said, I am not sure Jordan was being completely honest with you. Did you ask her how she would have felt in a reverse situation? If the three of you meet again, you might want to think about excusing yourself to go to the bathroom or something during the meal and instead hide and film their interaction while you are gone. See if Jordan changes how she interacts when you are not there. I say to capture it on your phone because then you have it to show her if you break up. If she interacts appropriately while you are gone, then she may have gotten the message. She should also start limiting her interactions with him, phone text, because that relationship is not healthy and no SO should have to deal with that if you two get married. It needs to be dealt with now. She did acknowledge that all the touching was inappropriate, yes. When she actually thought back on how much they were doing it and how over the top it was, she was embarrassed and realized she shouldn't have started acting like that just because Mark makes it seem normal. I didn't ask her how she'd feel in the reverse situation because it seemed like she got it immediately as soon as I told her how it made me feel. Unleashed 99. I am glad you spoke up and I am glad you received some clarity on the situation. Unfortunately, I think your girlfriend is lying. The problem is that she is not really lying to you. I mean, she is, but really she's lying to herself. If she is talking to this guy every day and not even realizing how physical she got with him when they met up after being physically separated for so long. She has been lying to herself for so long that the lies to you were just shrapnel from the nuclear lies she keeps telling herself. Obviously, they aren't a compatible couple long-term with their core beliefs being so different, but they have fed their emotional bond for so long that their connection is intense. Dude, she didn't even realize she was physically wrapped into this man with her long-term boyfriend right next to her. That speaks volumes. I have been coaching individuals in the infidelity realm long enough to have seen this same story play out 1,000 times now. I pray I am wrong for your sake, OP. But I fear if she doesn't entirely cut off Mark, you'll be either here or in R surviving infidelity in the next 2 years with a shocked Pikachu face on saying, just found out my fiancé has been cheating with her best friend Mark. I say that and I know it comes out a little snarky, but in all honesty my heart breaks saying it. Having been through betrayal like that personally, I'd gladly sacrifice many things in my own life to help prevent others from experiencing that same pain. So even if you believe your girlfriend, hold on to a shred of doubt and wonder if the experts might have some wisdom to offer your situation. As I saw someone else mention, the book Not Just Friends by Shirley Glass would be amazingly on point for your situation and might lead you towards some growth here. No matter what you choose, I pray you find peace and joy. Good luck. If the three of us are ever together again, I'll definitely be watching everything, but I don't think there's a chance of that happening for a while. I can admit there's a possibility that Jordan is just wrong about how she feels. After our talk, I do honestly think that's more likely than that she's trying to be dishonest or is gaslighting me. If that turns out to be the case, then that's going to have to be the end of the relationship, but I'm deciding to at least give her a chance here. Specific bag, 7401. A lot of what you detail still sounds weird. Especially the part where she didn't want to make Mark feel left out because he was visiting with a couple, him being a single man. Mark in no way visited with a couple. If Jordan is so empathetic re this issue, she sure missed showing any empathy for you. I don't think you will experience much difference with the next encounter with all three of you. You're very enthusiastic to give Jordan a pass. This will continue to haunt you. You don't seem to think you deserve to have this made right. Jordan has a very wide berth. I wish you the best. You just seem to feel you deserve so little. It's so sad. I do agree with you that it still sounds weird, but with more context I'm just more comfortable with it. Don't get me wrong, I still didn't appreciate being treated like a third wheel at dinner, and I still thought that Mark and Jordan were too handsy with each other just in general, and I'm not okay with that continuing. But if she's being honest with me that it's not because of romantic feelings, which I think she is, then I think as long as she's willing to have boundaries from now on after understanding that it made me uncomfortable, I don't think it's as much of a red flag as I thought before. In a lengthy comment, OOP is asked to consider whether it's not a matter of Jordan believable but that he wants to believe her so strongly that he is subconsciously subverting his standards for judgment. That's a really well thought out comment and I appreciate you taking the time to write it. And I absolutely do understand why everyone thinks I'm just letting Jordan gaslight me. Honestly, I'd probably think the same thing if someone else was telling me this story, so I can't really blame everyone. But I truly don't think I'm just being steered by wanting to believe her. It's hard to convey everything that happened when we talked into one post, but I'm just very sure that she was being genuine, and it was that convinced me that I could believe that she was saying, It wasn't that I just stopped being objective because that was the easier thing to do. Honestly, I think it would have been easier to keep assuming that what I thought in the first place was true because honestly it's easier for me to understand. I do think that Jordan's attachment to Mark is weird and probably unhealthy, and even if she doesn't think so, I think there's more than just friendship going on from his side of things. But I think Jordan is being honest that she's not in love with him and that she wants to be with me and not him, and that was the thing that was making me question the relationship. The other stuff that I do still take issue with I think can be worked out as long as Jordan takes seriously that she can't be acting in a way with Mark that disrespects me and our relationship, even if in her head it's not in a romantic way, and from the way our talk went I think I can trust her to do so. Second update, 2.5 months later. I apologize if this isn't right. I've never tried to post to my profile on here before, but a lot of people wanted an update and I don't think I'm allowed to post to the original subreddit. The situation seems pretty resolved now, after Mike and Jordan had an argument over everything and are no longer friends. What happened was that after Jordan told Mark we weren't available to hang out when he came back through our city, he blamed me, saying that he could tell Jordan was only saying no to hanging out because I had a problem with him. Jordan admitted that this was part of the reason and told Mark that she wanted a bit of space from him because she was trying to be respectful of our relationship. Mark got really offended and kept asking Jordan to explain why him being around was disrespectful to our relationship and kept pretending not to understand her answers. And then eventually during the conversation he started trying to guilt Jordan into making time for him and told her that she's become a worse person over the years, because the Jordan he knew would never blow him off. That upset Jordan a lot because she took it as Mark saying that she was a bad person since she left the church, and she started crying and she ended up hanging up on him. Jordan and I talked a lot afterwards. I told her that I thought Mark was toxic because anyone else would have been understanding of what she said. Jordan said that a lot of what he said during the conversation reminded her of being in the church. She said that she couldn't explain it except that it was his attitude when he tried to argue with her, but that it made her not really want to talk to him even outside of anything to do with our relationship. Mark texted Jordan the day after asking if she really wasn't going to come see him and if she was going to pick some boyfriend over her only friend after he's been there for her through everything. Jordan texted Mark back explaining her point again and saying that their friendship couldn't be the same anymore as it used to be now that she was with someone and that he should understand that. Mark texted Jordan that he couldn't believe she'd treat her best friend like that. Jordan tried to text Mark saying that a friend wouldn't be guilty of tripping her, but it turned out that he had blocked her number. After that, Jordan was feeling like she'd done something wrong and was too mean to Mark. But she and I talked about it again and she realized that she was right to not want to be friends with Mark if he's going to treat her like she owes him loyalty. Jordan then blocked him back, including on all her socials, so that if later he changes his mind and tries to apologize she can ignore him. A couple of weeks went by and while I'll admit I was pretty happy about not hearing from Mark, Jordan was really bummed about how everything ended. She said that although she saw now that Mark isn't a good person to have in her life because of his reaction to her trying to set a boundary, she still felt sad and abandoned, and it was bringing back a lot of the same feelings as when she was a teenager and her other church friends all turned their backs on her. So at this point I asked her if she's ever thought about going to therapy for religious trauma, and she said she'd gone for a few months when she first left the church, but the therapist wasn't really helpful. I suggested that maybe it would be a good idea to try again with a better therapist because it sounds like all this stuff still bothers her a lot, and Jordan agreed with me and decided to make an appointment. She's had a couple of therapy sessions that she says so far are good, but I don't really ask her for any details on what they talk about, so I can't really update on that part of the situation. Relevant comments. Asiktak. Mark sounds toxic at this point. He sounded iffy before, honestly, with the way he was so positive he would have been with Jordan, but this is not the way you treat someone who is supposed to be a friend. He wants to be her number one friend, then he should try actually being a friend and listening. I assume he isn't because in his religion the man is supposed to speak and the woman is supposed to listen. Yes, tell Jordan to try a different therapist. If the therapist isn't working for her, that just means she has the wrong therapist. She can find a good one and I really hope she does. Agreed. I didn't trust Mark when I thought he was just in love with her, but seeing him be so shitty and demanding really made it clear that he's a POS. Julia Valentine. I've been reading these posts since it first came out and it sucks that it had to turn out this way, but I think it's for the better. Especially the part of her going back to therapy too. Does she have other new friends not related to the church that she can rely on too? Her having her own support system that is separate from you and Mark could also help her. Anyways, wishing you all the best. Jordan seems like a very lovely girl and I'm glad you both are going strong outside of the trauma. Does she have other new friends not related to the church that she can rely on too? She does. We have a few couples that we're pretty close friends with, and she also has a bunch of friends from her work who I know she talks to about problems and all that stuff. My husband finally cut ties with his toxic mom and sister after they demanded we give up our house for my jobless sister-in-law and her family. My in-laws have a very toxic connection with my spouse, and it is beginning to ruin my life. Growing up, my husband was my favorite, the golden child, and my mother-in-law was very close to him. Jacob has informed me that because his father was so busy at work, he and his mother spent a lot of time together. However, I've noticed that his sister, Sarah, is not treated equally by my mother-in-law. Although I am confident that my mother-in-law loves both of her children, I have repeatedly observed that she prioritizes my husband. I'm sure Sarah felt the same way growing up, which is why my husband has always attempted to fill the void by being a kind elder brother to her and always being there for her. But the truth is that Sarah and my mother-in-law would sometimes behave in such a ridiculous manner that it crossed the line. For example, when we initially started dating, Jacob, a recent college graduate, and my in-laws, including Sarah, shared a house. My in-laws had offered my husband a totally own level so that he could have his own privacy and welcome whomever he pleased. This is why he would occasionally invite me to his home to spend the night with him. However, several times in the morning, Sarah would storm into our room while we were asleep without knocking. As you may guess, we were not always properly dressed, but she would act as if everything was normal and begin talking to Jacob about utterly random topics. This was very strange for me because I was uncomfortable with her seeing me in my lingerie. Before anyone points out, I absolutely understand that Jacob was living with his family at the time, so I should have expected this, but is knocking on the door before entering really that much to ask? I suppose siblings can be quite close, but she and I didn't know each other very well when Jacob and I first started dating, so I thought it was really rude. Naturally, I spoke with Jacob about it and informed him that I would not be going over unless he installed a lock on his door. He agreed. But as you can guess, Sarah, who attempted to storm into the room the next morning but was unsuccessful, began ranting at us about why the door was locked. She began jiggling and hammering on the door, begging her brother to let her in. Jacob eventually let her in, and she stormed into the room, asking why he had set the lock in the first place. When she recognized me, she pointed to me and began ranting at him, asking if it was because of this skank. I was astonished by how harsh and insulting she sounded. Jacob told Sarah that he wanted to install the door lock, but Sarah was not convinced. She angrily informed him that they were siblings and should not keep any secrets between them. Jacob told her that he had no secrets, and that he had put the lock so she wouldn't barge in when we were asleep, which was quite disturbing. Sarah violently flipped her head towards me and exclaimed that it was all my fault, saying that I was interfering with her and her brother. This was too much for me, as I am generally non-confrontational, so I excused myself to visit the restroom. I could hear her yelling, with Jacob attempting to calm her. When she eventually left, Jacob came in to comfort me. He apologized for her actions and informed me that he would speak with her again so she could apologize to me as well. When I arrived the following weekend, Sarah apologized and offered me a pitiful excuse, claiming that she needed to speak with Jacob urgently and so believed it would be good for me to come in. Jacob forcefully asked her not to bother us again, and she agreed sheepishly. Although this issue appeared to be remedied, it was not the only strange conduct she demonstrated towards Jacob. If Jacob and I differed on something, even something as trivial as movies, and Sarah was around, she would begin telling him that he should date someone with comparable likes, meaning that we were unsuitable for each other. Jacob would give her a condemning look, but she would simply smirk. Another episode was Sarah asking me awkward questions about my background in an attempt to delve into my life. Jacob and I had been open about our past since the beginning, but I didn't feel comfortable addressing it with his sister. Regardless of my thoughts, she would ask me questions like, "Why did your ex break up with you? Were you not suitable for him?" Can make remarks like, "My brother's previous girlfriend was far more attractive than you." All of these queries and comments arose when she and I were alone. I began to suspect that she was trying to play a game with me, bringing me down. I initially kept my lips shut, but as the situation progressed, I had enough. One day, I responded to her taunting by stating, I liked my ex-boyfriend's family better than Jacob's because he didn't have nosy, overbearing family members. Sarah was taken aback by my reply, which temporarily silenced her. Even though Sarah had a strange relationship with my husband, my mother-in-law was no exception. When I first entered Jacob's life, my mother-in-law ignored me, but once she discovered we were serious, She began acting as if I was attempting to steal her son away. She would purposefully ignore me at dinners and family gatherings, as if I did not exist. Jacob saw this occasionally and tried to talk to her, but she never changed. My mother-in-law once referred to me as stuck-up and spoiled, just because my parents put me to a private school while she was a public school teacher. I also know she tried to talk Jacob out of marrying me, telling him he should look for a better spouse. Fortunately, my spouse did not care about her view and proposed to me nonetheless. My mother-in-law and Sarah were shocked to learn that Jacob had proposed. Both contacted me, telling me that it was a horrible decision and that, because Jacob wouldn't listen to them, I should quit the relationship and return the ring. I found this quite strange and declined, stating that they were crossing a line by asking me to do something like that when I loved Jacob and wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. When they realized they couldn't persuade me, my mother-in-law reluctantly changed her mind, telling me that I should strive to be the best wife for him and care for him in the same manner she did for years. I was rather offended, but I tried not to take her remarks too seriously. Sarah, on the other hand, accused me of being a gold digger and claimed her brother deserved someone with higher status. She even threatened to expose me before our wedding so Jacob would not marry me. Following this conversation, I immediately spoke with Jacob about everything. He was taken aback by how disrespectful they were towards me. He challenged them, but my mother-in-law and Sarah continued to believe that I was unsuitable for him. Jacob told me to disregard them, assuring me that he loved me regardless of their opinions. Despite his reassuring remarks, I felt horrible that his own family would not embrace me. Jacob and I had already chosen to pay for our wedding ourselves, so when my mother-in-law offered to cover half of the cost, we politely declined. Despite Jacob's reassuring remarks, I felt horrible that his own family would not embrace me. Jacob and I had already planned to pay for our own wedding, so when my mother-in-law offered to cover half of the costs, we politely declined, with Jacob explaining how hard we had worked to save money specifically for this occasion. Instead of being happy for us, she became even more angry, and she began telling Jacob how sad she was that he no longer needed her. However, Jacob's father appeared to be quite pleased with us. Unlike his sister and mother, his father was very calm and never had any issues with our connection. Since my mother-in-law continued to complain to Jacob, we made a compromise by telling her that we would love for her to organize the rehearsal dinner for us. She agreed, and we appreciated her generosity. However, when the wedding approached, events took an unexpected turn. The first instance came when Sarah invited herself to join us for supper, telling Jacob how much she missed him. Jacob and I were living on our own following our engagement, so we assumed she genuinely wanted to spend time with her brother. We agreed, and Jacob asked me directly if I was comfortable with having supper with her. I reluctantly consented, not wanting to be nasty to my soon-to-be sister-in-law. While we were enjoying our dinner, Sarah abruptly began discussing how much she despised cheating partners, claiming that cheaters were nothing but useless pieces of trash. We stared at her, curious about where she was headed with this. Then, out of nowhere, she looked me directly in the eyes and asked how it felt to be a useless piece of trash. My brow furrowed in perplexity as Sarah began to rant, accusing me of having an affair with my co-worker Zach. Jacob, also perplexed, asked her what she meant by saying. Sarah proudly hauled out photos of me and one of my co-workers, waving them around and claiming that she had caught me red-handed. I knew I'd never been unfaithful to Jacob, so I was curious as to why she assumed I was having an affair. Looking through the photos, they appeared to be entirely innocent. It's true that Zach and I were close co-workers, but only because we started at the same time and helped each other out when we made mistakes, so our manager wouldn't criticize us. Zach even had a girlfriend, which Jacob knew about. I don't have a lock on my phone, and I've always been open with Jacob about all of my colleagues. Sarah had turned these pleasant moments caught in photographs into something they were not. Evidence of a fictitious affair. In truth, they were far from it. Her false charges irritated me since it was obvious she was attempting to damage my reputation and disrupt my connection with Jacob. Before I could defend myself, Jacob, stunned and plainly upset, moved in to help. He questioned Sarah why she was following me around and photographing me with my co-workers in public places without their permission. When Sarah heard this, she began rationalizing her behavior, claiming she simply wanted to investigate me because I was not of their status, and she was scared I was marrying Jacob to steal his money. Jacob told her unequivocally that her charges were false and that she was creating extra drama out of nothing. He tried to reason with her, telling her to stop spreading lies and attempting to destroy our relationship, but Sarah insisted that Jacob open his eyes to the obvious affair that was going on. I also tried to clarify that we were only co-workers, but Sarah insisted on her charges. As her charges grew more serious, the environment became strained. I had had enough and informed her that I was going to make a police report against her for illegally photographing and stalking me. Her look grew terrified as she inquired whether I was serious. I informed her I had all of the evidence. She had purposely tracked me and took these images without my permission, attempting to slander me with ludicrous lies. Sarah stared at Jacob and then back at me, arguing that she did everything to protect her brother and that it wasn't a big deal. She began imploring Jacob to speak with me, worried that if I filed a complaint it would jeopardize her profession and future. I strongly told her that she could only save herself at this time. Sarah inquired what I wanted. I assured her I wouldn't pursue the complaint if she kept away from my life. Sarah had no other option for escaping the situation at that point. She looked to her brother for support, but Jacob defended me, telling her that she should be grateful I was willing to let it go because what she had done was clearly wrong. Sarah reluctantly agreed to stay away from me, and we have not spoken since that day. Jacob still has a relationship with her, but she has never spoken to me again. The second incident occurred shortly before our wedding, at the rehearsal dinner. My mother-in-law, who had insisted on planning the meal, rebuffed our offer of assistance in any manner. She told us that she would take care of everything. However, when we arrived, it was evident that the preparations were far from what we had anticipated. The rehearsal dinner had plastic tablecloths on picnic tables and chilly Mexican food. My mother-in-law was upset throughout dinner, which marred the festive atmosphere. She drank excessively and began behaving inappropriately with the guests, repeatedly stating how she couldn't wait for the wedding to end and how stressful it had been, despite the fact that she had not contributed monetarily or assisted with the planning. Eventually, my father-in-law became irate and escorted her away. Sarah attempted to excuse her mother's actions, but my father-in-law refused to listen. As you might guess, the entire affair was a fiasco, and I began to worry that both my mother-in-law and Sarah would wreck the wedding the next day. That night, Jacob and I had our first disagreement. I informed him strongly that he needed to uninvite Sarah and his mother because, based on their actions, they would surely try to overshadow us at the wedding. My husband angrily protested, promising me that his father would be present and would not allow them to get away with it. Frustrated, I promised that if he didn't uninvite them, there would be no wedding the following day. Jacob was plainly taken aback by my demand, and even knowing how extreme I sounded, I was concerned about what they might do. I did not want to be embarrassed again in front of my family and friends on our wedding day. Jacob definitely lacked firm boundaries, but I hoped that this ultimatum would make him realize how much his family was interfering with our relationship. Thankfully, Jacob understood and made the proper decision. He called his father early in the morning to inform him that his mother and sister were uninvited. Phil didn't appear startled and promised Jacob that he'd make sure my mother-in-law and Sarah didn't show up there unexpectedly. Shortly after our chat with Phil, my mother-in-law and Sarah began contacting Jacob constantly, apparently trying to persuade him to let them attend the wedding. However, Jacob forcefully told them that he did not feel comfortable having them there because of how they had treated me throughout our relationship. Hearing this, my mother-in-law began accusing me of being a terrible influence and interfering with her relationship with her son. Sarah attempted to argue with him, but Jacob was certain in his decision. I felt horrible that Phil couldn't attend our wedding because of his wife and children. I even felt sorry about issuing the ultimatum. But all of my remorse vanished when I discovered from some of Jacob's cousins that Sarah and my mother-in-law had intended to wear white dresses to our wedding. The cousins informed me that in their family WhatsApp group, which only had female members, Sarah had encouraged the others to wear white as well, stating there was no reason for the bride to be the only one. I was astounded by how low they would go just to hurt me. After knowing this, I was relieved they hadn't been invited. Jacob missed his family, but he could see where I was coming from. Overall, we had a lovely wedding, and no one tried to outdo us. Since that day, my mother-in-law and Sarah have stopped talking to me entirely, which I am absolutely okay with. They only invited Jacob around for dinner or special events, which didn't bother me at all. Phil, on the other hand, was always kind to me, and we stayed in touch over the years. Jacob and I painstakingly saved money and finally purchased a new home this year. It was our first home, and we were overjoyed to own something so meaningful. Jacob's parents and Sarah did come to visit for a modest housewarming celebration, but I went to see my parents and spent time with my family instead. Now, to the major point, my mother-in-law contacted me unexpectedly last month. This was really surprising because Mom and I hadn't spoken since the day I married Jacob. Surprisingly, she casually inquired about my well-being and life circumstances. I was taken aback by her unexpected interest, but I responded pleasantly. Then she questioned how it felt to live in such a spacious house with only Jacob and myself. Her remark stung since Jacob and I had been trying to conceive for a long time but were unable to do so owing to infertility concerns. Jacob and I had mourned the thought of never having children, but we gradually accepted it. When I first got the news, I informed Jacob that if he wanted to marry someone else and have children, he could divorce me. But Jacob had always stayed by me, assuring me that it was fine to be childless as long as we had each other. Our families were aware of this, so my mother-in-law's comment was very painful. She then told me Sarah was pregnant again. I was astonished because this would be her 6th child. Jacob had told me how her husband was unemployed and did not believe in using contraception, which resulted in these accidental pregnancies. Sarah's boyfriend was the embodiment of laziness, doing nothing around the house to aid her or the kids. I've heard from Jacob that he treats Sarah like a personal maid. He never pays any bills in the house. Sarah works many part-time jobs, while he spends the entire day gaming. Regardless of how much everyone has talked to her, Sarah never breaks up with him. My mother-in-law then went on to add that because Sarah could no longer afford to work during her pregnancy, she thought Jacob and I should give up our apartment because it was too big for a childless couple like us. I was caught aback by her demand and struggled to find words. I inquired whether she was joking, but my mother-in-law responded that she was serious, that Sarah and her husband deserved to live in a larger house. However, because she did not have enough space in her own home to accommodate them, she invited them to come in with us. The weight of her news weighed in the air as I fought to keep my composure in the midst of the emotional storm. I emphasized to her that this was our house, which we were still paying for, and the idea of someone else moving in without our permission was intrusive and ludicrous. However, my mother-in-law said that she had already spoken with Jacob, who had allegedly consented to this. This was strange because Jacob and I were always open with each other, and I knew he would have told me if he had agreed to let his sister and her family stay with us. I firmly told my mother-in-law that because the house belonged to both me and Jacob, he couldn't grant permission without my agreement. No one was allowed to reside here unless both of us agreed. To reach a solution, I told her that I would be pleased to accommodate Sarah and her husband for a few days if they wished, but that they could not stay permanently. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, began yelling, arguing that as a responsible daughter-in-law, I was required to make room for Sarah and her husband. She also assured me that if I complied with her demands, all previous troubles would be forgiven. In rage, I cynically said, "Sure, I'll be pleased to let them take our place. But you see, we're still paying for it, and I'm confident that if Sarah and her husband move in, they will not assist with the mortgage or bills. So how about you take some responsibility and contribute to their living expenses? I'd be grateful if you could just cover the mortgage, and we'll manage the rest. Of course, with only one job, you'll definitely need a second one to cover the home payments. Please let me know when you intend to get that second job." Hearing this, my mother-in-law exploded in wrath, shouting and voicing her dissatisfaction. She said it was crazy of me to want her to pay the mortgage, and I responded that it was equally ridiculous for her to expect us to care for Sarah's family and allow them to move in. This infuriated her even more, and she continued to yell, while I smiled with satisfaction. She eventually disconnected the call when she saw I wouldn't give in to her demands. Soon after, Sarah called and yelled at me for daring to ask her mother to pay our mortgage. She went on to add that she had always known I was a gold digger. I informed her that she was the gold digger, attempting to live with us without contributing. I added that if she wanted to know who the true gold digger was, she could look at her own partner, who did nothing to assist her. This appeared to silence her. I firmly told Sarah that she could argue with me all she wanted, but I would never let her family into our home unless they agreed to help with the mortgage. She accused me of being cruel and putting money before family. The tables had turned and I was relieved at the thought of sticking up for myself and refusing to back down, taking control of my home. However, I feel a little awful thinking about my ex-husband, and I'm here on Reddit wondering if what I've done makes me the villain. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who has expressed their support. To answer the most crucial question that everyone keeps asking, why would my mother-in-law demand such a stupid thing of us? It's because she has always been so entitled. Clearly my husband has tolerated this charade for far too long, and he and I need to sit down and have a serious discussion about it. It's heartbreaking how my mother-in-law can lie about her own kid in order to get her way. My sister-in-law is a pawn in her game, doing whatever her mother-in-law wishes because my mother-in-law has always favored my husband. Sarah simply listens to what her mother says in the hopes of garnering favor as well. In this situation, Sarah stood to benefit because she could rely on us to pay her expenses and care for her children while her useless husband did nothing. I'm waiting for my spouse to return from his business trip so we can discuss. I do not want to discuss this over the phone since it is too important. Update 2. It's been 3 days since I last updated. As I indicated earlier, I was waiting for my husband to return. When he returned, we finally sat down and talked. I told him how his mother had called and demanded that we give up our house to his sister and her family. Jacob was definitely taken aback, so I gave him the whole story. He subsequently said that he had no idea about any of it. Prior to his journey, his mother had only told him that his sister was pregnant. That was all he knew about the situation, and he had no idea his mother would make such unreasonable demands. I informed him forcefully that I expected him to speak with his mother and deal with the matter because I couldn't bear his family anymore. He agreed. Jacob confronted his mother and questioned why she had lied to me about him. When caught red-handed, my mother-in-law attempted to backtrack, claiming that she had not actually lied. She said that she knew Jacob would have no objections to his sister staying with us, so she took matters into her own hands and approached me personally. Jacob stopped her off and questioned why she thought he would be fine with Sarah and her entire family coming in. My mother-in-law explained that because Jacob and Sarah were close, he would naturally want to support her by allowing her family to come in. Hearing this, I closed my eyes in disgust, but remained silent, allowing Jacob to handle his mother. Jacob then firmly told her that he was not going to let Sarah, her unemployed husband, and their 6 children move in with us. He also stated that she had no authority to compel us to take care of them. My mother-in-law started yelling, stating Sarah desperately needed aid at this time. But Jacob informed her it was not our job, and if she wanted to help, she could care for Sarah herself. My mother-in-law then said that Phil didn't want them in their small house, although we lived in a larger house and could easily help out. She even had the audacity to suggest that, since I was childless, assisting Sarah's children would make me feel fulfilled. My eyes widened with surprise, but for the first time, I noticed Jacob's face shift color. He raged at her, stating she had no right to say such rude things about me and couldn't use it to compel me to care for Sarah's children. Jacob went on to say that Phil didn't want anything to do with Sarah since she had turned into a child-birthing machine and that he was over both of them. My mother-in-law tried to backtrack again, but Jacob would not have it. He informed her that he had done his best to keep a positive connection with them, even after they had repeatedly disrespected me, but he couldn't take it any longer. My mother-in-law begged him, but Jacob assured her that this was our home and I was his wife. Anyone that offended me disrespected him as well, and they did not deserve to be in his life. Jacob ended the call with those final words. Since then, he has not spoken with Sarah or his mother. Phil summoned Jacob to speak, and after hearing the entire story, he understood why Jacob had made such a severe move. Phil apologized to me on behalf of his wife, but I informed him that it was not his responsibility. Update 3. It has been an interesting 2 weeks. A lot of people suggested that I install cameras around our house in case my mother-in-law and Sarah wanted to show up and cause a commotion. So I purchased several cameras online and installed them. As luck would have it, they showed up last weekend, banging on my door while I was alone at home. When I saw them through the camera, I quickly called Jacob, who told me he was on his way. I answered the door, and there they were, my mother-in-law and Sarah, both furious. They requested that I let them in, but I refused and told them that if they had anything to say, they could do so from the outside. My mother-in-law began ranting at me, accusing me of being callous, greedy and selfish. I politely informed her that this was our home, and they had no right to enter uninvited. She continued her tirade, unknowing that the cameras were recording every moment. I reminded her of our prior chat, emphasizing that I would not give up our house for Sarah and her family, and that if she had anything else to say, she could wait for Jacob's return. Sarah then began yelling, accusing me of breaking up the family for no reason, being a gold digger and attempting to take her brother away from them. I informed them that everything they said was being recorded and that I would use the footage to obtain a restraining order if necessary. Their eyes widened in surprise as my mother-in-law exclaimed that I wouldn't dare to do that. I smirked and informed her that if they did not leave the property immediately, they would receive a legal notice very soon. This worried them, and Sarah tried to convince me that I was overreacting, saying that it wasn't a big problem. Fortunately, Jacob came at that exact moment. He approached them casually, asking what they were doing. My mother-in-law raced to hug him, but he resisted and forcefully demanded why they had come. Sarah stated that I was attempting to control his life by separating him from them and that they had come to face me. Jacob reiterated that it was his decision to avoid touch, and he did not want anything to do with either of them. My mother-in-law begged for forgiveness, but Jacob merely told them to leave the property or he would call the cops. They were visibly taken aback, apparently not anticipating this reaction from him. Jacob went on to say that if they ever came up at our house again, we would contact the police and have them removed forcibly. They fled, devastated, but Jacob no longer cared. I was relieved that my spouse had finally spoken up for me. Jacob has now spoken with Phil, who was as surprised as we were that my mother-in-law and Sarah had gone behind his back to show up unexpectedly. Phil informed us that we were correct not to let them in and expressed disgust with their behavior. With Jacob being so stern about kicking them out, I doubt they'll dare to return to our property. If they do, I will contact a lawyer right away. I am relieved that my husband has finally learned how toxic his family is, and I hope this is my final update. I'm ready to move on from this circumstance and continue our lives peacefully. My wife left me for her rich lover, but when he lost it all, she came crawling back asking for a second chance. I am 32 years old, and I have been married to my wife, who is 27, for over 6 years. We've been together for 8 years and 3 months and have lived together for 7 years. In my opinion, everything was always excellent. I felt like we were the ideal relationship. We both have decent careers, secure money, and purchased a home 5 years ago. In February 2022, I tragically lost my mother to a heart attack. The months that followed were extremely difficult for both myself and my wife, who was close to my mother. By harsh, I mean truly rough. We hardly went out twice throughout that time, spending most nights at home relaxing on the couch and watching TV. I wasn't happy, but I assumed we'd get through it. Then D-Day arrived 5 weeks ago. My wife went out drinking with 3 male coworkers, only 5 minutes away from our house. I was okay with it, thinking, cool, but I'm going to bed soon. Around 3:30 a.m., she arrived home with those 3 guys. I knew them all. She then informed me that she was going out with them to the city. I disliked it, but I couldn't stop her. Everything closes at 4 a.m., yet despite the 15-minute travel home, she didn't arrive until 5:30. That was when my suspicions began, despite the fact that I had never mistrusted her before. 4 weeks ago she departed for an entire Sunday, claiming she was going to a carnival with her mother. I didn't trust it but had no idea what to do. She even left without saying goodbye while I was showering. She arrived home later that day, weeping. My initial answer was, "Honey, come here. What happened? What's made you so upset?" Her first words were, "I want a divorce." Following that, we had an emotional conversation. I asked her straight up whether she had cheated and she answered no. She told me she was unhappy for a long time and wanted a divorce. She had never informed me anything was wrong with our relationship, so this really surprised me. After our conversation, she left and moved in with her mother. 4 days later, I met her again since we have a puppy that neither of us can care for on our own, especially at her mother's house, so the dog is currently staying with an aunt. When we met again, I confronted her about infidelity. This time she admitted it. She said that she had cheated on me from the night she went drinking until a week later, when she left home. She stated that she believed she was in love with him. When I asked her what she liked best about him, she simply answered, "We have a good connection, a spark." That was it, I suppose. She also stated that she was experiencing a midlife crisis and was unsure about her life goals. In my perspective, she's going insane. She unexpectedly colored her hair purple and joined up for motorbike training. I attempted to reconcile with her during the first week or 2 of her departure, but she refused to budge. Every significant message I sent her was ignored. She did respond to light ones, but her responses were brief and arrogant. I really don't recognize my wife anymore. Her personality appeared to transform in just 1 week. She treats me as if I never existed in her life, as if I were a piece of junk. Is this a protective strategy to make things easier for her by pushing her issues into the future? Has she truly changed and feels this way now? How on earth is that possible? I mean, I get that falling in love is a fantastic experience, but what will happen to her after a few months when the honeymoon period with this guy is gone and she wakes up from it all? I've had a lot of conflicting sentiments. I resent her for cheating on me, and I'm incredibly disappointed. But I also see and understand that the foundation of our marriage has always been strong. 5 weeks have passed since D-Day. She still hasn't filed for divorce and neither have I. I'm not sure, but I believe she's still seeing the person she cheated on me with. To be honest, I am split between saving our marriage and ending it. Right now, I don't care if we get back together or divorce. I honestly do not know what to do. If I file for divorce now, I might regret it later for being too quick, But I also can't keep living in this state of limbo. Still legally married, but she's already gone. Edit. For the first 4 days after she departed, I was unsure if she had cheated on me or not. Those were the toughest days because I felt so horrible and as if I had messed up everything. But as she admitted to cheating, those sentiments began to vanish. Even if I share responsibility for some aspects of our divorce, it is entirely her fault. She never showed me she was unhappy. She appeared pleased, as if she could have been an actress. She never mentioned being dissatisfied or what needed to change. To top it all off, she has cheated and continues to do so. This is finished. I no longer feel there is a way out of this. Also, I don't miss her right now. Sure, I miss who we were as a couple, but who is she now? Honestly, I almost feel sorry for the next guy whose heart she's bound to shatter. To be honest, I'm doing really well after my mother died. Of course, I had other issues at the time, but I was finally getting out of the funk and climbing back up. I wanted to go outside, drink, have fun, ride my motorcycle, etc. But then she cheated and kicked me back into the ravine. It will be all right in time, but I have to say that I am not looking forward to the holidays. No mother, no wife, and my father is alone after 40 years of marriage. But we will deal with it. Life carries on. Fortunately, I have a wonderful sister and a close circle of friends who I have known for over 20 years. I'm not ready to return to single life, but I am also a little excited. I haven't dated in almost 8 years, and I haven't gone out without first checking in with my partner. Of course, I fell as deeply as possible this year, but I'm confident that there will be better days ahead. One of the Redditors was completely correct about us marrying too young. When we married, I was 26 and she was 21. I haven't changed much in those years, but it's possible that she has changed much and has hidden those feelings for quite some time. Note, she stated that she is experiencing a midlife crisis. Those are her words, not mine. To go deeper into our common interests, hobbies, characteristics, and so on, I merely indicated in the post that we lived a stable life. I didn't go into depth since I didn't believe it would matter very much, and the post is already pretty lengthy. But here we go, hobbies and interests. We both enjoy gaming, although we have never played together. I'm now playing Age of Empires 4 on my PC, while she prefers to play The Witcher on her PlayStation 4. We both enjoyed watching a good Netflix show, especially after my mother died. We did it frequently, but even before that, we preferred staying in together to watch a nice movie rather than going out drinking. We would occasionally go to the movies or play pool, maybe once or twice a month. We also went out to dinner. We both liked motorcycles. I had a license and a bike, whereas she didn't. She always enjoyed sitting in the back seat of the bike as a passenger. When she was younger, her father would take her for rides on his bike. Apparently, she wants her own license and bike, something I was unaware of. Family time. We both enjoyed spending time with our family. We'd usually spend every other Sunday at her mother's house, with her stepfather, her father's house, with her stepmother, or my father's house. We enjoyed driving to nature sites and forests, as well as going for walks with our dogs. Personality traits. I enjoyed how spontaneous she could be. Well, she appears to be too impetuous, but that's okay. I sometimes overthink things, such as whether we should buy something, whether we actually enjoy it, how much money we have at the time, and so on. She would simply buy it or book the vacation I was apprehensive about. I admire that about her. I realize we were diametrically opposed in this regard. I adored her sense of humor. We had, or have, an incredible connection when it comes to humor. We had the exact same dry, goofy sense of humor and always had a good time together. I always admired her honesty and straightforwardness, until things went wrong. She was continuously telling me how she felt, what she liked and disliked. For example, approximately 4 years ago I became addicted to a video game. At the time, I had no idea what I was doing wrong, but after a few weeks, she told me I wasn't making her happy and that I needed to pay more attention to our relationship, which I did. I kept gaming to a bare minimum. Bro, I enjoyed the way she spoke, walked and laughed. I adored her appearance. She had a beautiful grin. I even liked how she usually sneezes 8 to 10 times in a row. But as of right now, all of those sentiments I had, or have, are quickly dissipating. As for our sex life, I'll make it brief. We didn't have much sex. Since we got married, I'd guess it's been twice a month on average. In my opinion, it was always fantastic, though I'm not sure about hers anymore. Thinking back, we both always climaxed, unless she faked it, which I doubt. The sex act wasn't that thrilling. We always performed the same 3 or 4 positions and that was it. Update 1. Okay, I made several calls yesterday. In the Netherlands, We have something called a mediator, who handles all elements of divorce. This mediator handles the lawyer's work, including financial and emotional discussions. It's like an all-in-one individual assisting two people with their divorce. Today, we spoke with this mediator. Unfortunately, my soon-to-be ex's car broke down, and I had to pick her up. Yes, I had to for this to work for the divorce to be finalized. It is critical that both of us attend the meetings with the mediator. Anyway, the talk went well, as predicted. We both indicated our desire to be divorced, but the adultery was never acknowledged. I didn't think it was worth stating that the mediator is neutral and does not take sides. Also, in the Netherlands, there are no rules against cheating, thus she has the same rights as if she hadn't cheated. We remained seated at the table after the mediator had left, barely speaking. Our cats roaming about were the only diversion. After a few minutes, I inquired if she had anything further to say and she said, no. I thus said, okay then, I think you can go now because I don't want you here. She asked, can you take me home? I declined, saying, how you get home is your own problem. I'm not in the mood to drive 30 minutes to get you home. She looked emotional. I believe she expected me to drive her home because, in the past, I had done everything for her. After that, she called her mother, who will pick her up in about an hour. She left the house stating, I'm going for a walk for about an hour until mom arrives to pick me up. She seemed hurt and emotional as she departed, but I'm staying strong. I still notice a lot of unusual behavior on her part, and I believe she is still in the affair fog. Despite everything, I still love her for who she was, but for the time being, I'm staying tough and treating her as if she meant nothing to me. Edit. As of right now, she means nothing to me. She is just no longer the woman I loved and remained faithful to. Query. I have a query that requires some context. For the past 11 years, I have worked as a driver for a transportation firm called Supertrans. I resigned that job 4 months ago and got a new one with another transportation firm. Around 1.5 years ago, I secured my soon-to-be ex a job at Supertrans. She worked in the office, and I was the driver. I also know her affair partner, AP, who works in the warehouse at Supertrans. Because I worked there for 11 years, I know everyone in the Supertrans office. Everyone liked me, and I was close friends with some of the dispatchers. As far as I know, my old co-workers, her present co-workers, are aware that we are divorcing, but no one is aware that she is, or has been, having an affair with AP, a warehouse employee. Her direct co-worker, who works at the desk next to her, is a 32-year-old gay man who was also present on the night my wife cheated. I will call him Thomas. However, he left early that night. Thomas was one of my favorite persons at their office, and he also liked me a lot. My soon-to-be ex is currently on vacation and will return to work next Monday. I know Thomas likes me and wants the best for me. I'm seriously considering sending Thomas a message explaining what occurred and revealing the affair to him. Of course, I'd like to warn him that my wife has no morals and cannot be trusted. I mean, Thomas has to work with her on a daily basis. I want him to understand what kind of person my soon-to-be ex is. I also plan to inform him who the AP is because Thomas was with them the night she cheated. I want Thomas to understand how morally bankrupt the AP is, and I understand that this may appear to be a desire for vengeance. I suppose I do. This woman has put me through hell. I mentioned a few weeks ago that I would love to hear about her having a bad day at work next Monday since her co-workers knew she deceived me and had an affair. Really, everyone liked me. I've known the majority of her staff for more than 10 years. Furthermore, I have the option of telling or not telling anyone about her adultery. Okay, so this isn't the question I intended to ask. Should I do this? But I believe I've already made up my mind. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it and why you think I should or should not. Update 2. You've all been a tremendous assistance in my predicament. I must admit that I am mentally exhausted, but overall, I am doing better than I could have expected after only 6 weeks. I have a question regarding my soon-to-be ex-wife's current behavior. Is it common for my soon-to-be ex to treat everyone around her as trash, except her AP and her own parents, I suppose? She is clearly treating me horribly, with no respect, as if I were the worst spouse ever. She claims she's been miserable for several years, which I think is pure nonsense. Anyway, I don't really care what she's doing to me anymore. She's wrecking her life, not mine, but it's having an impact on others as well. My father gave her the sweetest note he'd ever given. And she didn't even respond with a thank you, nothing. After my mother died in February of last year, my wife would often take my father to a nearby amusement park. They both have subscriptions to it, so they go very frequently. My father adored her, and I am witnessing him age by the hour, which saddens me deeply. My soon-to-be ex-wife does not even send a thank you note. She simply leaves him to read. She also stated that she wanted to be close friends with my younger sister, but they have not spoken in several weeks. Also, my wife was meant to spend the day with her best friend, a common friend of ours, but she is now ignoring her. Her best friend texted her numerous times yesterday, wondering whether today was still on, but my wife did not respond or even check her texts. She also didn't answer the phone. So today, when they were meant to meet, the same thing happened. She didn't answer the phone. Her BFF sent her one more message, wondering whether she was still coming. No response. She didn't even read the messages, even though her WhatsApp status reveals she was online after they were sent. Needless to say, her best friend has been crying all day. She took the day off to spend with my wife, go shopping, and have fun, and then this happened. Is this typical behavior for someone in an affair fog, or might it be something else? I don't care what my wife is doing. I'm done with her, but this is so awful for her best friend. She's been crying on her couch all day because my wife treats her this way. While I'm composing this, another question comes to mind, but I believe I already have the answer. My soon-to-be ex-wife is telling everyone we broke up because we grew apart and she hasn't been happy in years. I believe it is typical for a cheater to make excuses and not be open about what happened and how they fell in love with someone else. Oh, I almost forgot something really crucial. Her BFF, a common buddy, really stayed with us for 6 months, from November 2021 to April 2022. She had recently gotten out of a nasty relationship and had no place to stay. We had an extra room, so we brought her in. Anyway, my wife and her best friend actually discussed everything, including our relationship and sex life. Everything. I talk to her best friend every day and she's been extremely lovely and completely honest with me. I asked her whether anything my wife had said about being unhappy with me for an extended length of time was genuine. BFF claims it's all lies. My wife has never mentioned anything to her, nor has she expressed any displeasure with me. Keep in mind that they told each other everything except their feelings of unhappiness. So either my soon-to-be ex-wife is clearly lying now, I'm not sure why, possibly to explain her cheating on me and fleeing our marriage, or she has kept her unpleasant feelings hidden from absolutely everyone but herself. I honestly do not know. But in my experience, I've never noticed her being dissatisfied with me, and BFF agrees. Many thanks again, everyone. Your help has been invaluable, and I would not be where I am today without it. Edit. I honestly hope karma hits her hard, sooner rather than later. Also, when people ask me why we're getting divorced, I tell them the truth about her being a selfish cheater. Just yesterday, a female acquaintance shared my communications from my wife and her. The discussion went like this. Oh my God, honey, is it true you and your husband are separated? My wife said, yes, sadly, this is the truth. The companion inquired, oh my God, no, what happened? My wife responded, yeah, well, we just grew apart over the last few years and have different life goals. We chose to terminate it. Needless to say, I corrected this and told our friend the truth, that my wife cheated on me, pretended to be in love and abandoned me for another man. Everyone who learns the truth from me is shocked. By the way, no one, including myself, expected my wife to do this. Update 3. I plan to make a new post in a few weeks. For now, I'm fine. When I realized she was out there living her life without me, I began doing the same. I spoke with my soon-to-be ex-wife several times, and the conclusion seemed to be that she still loved me, but it wasn't fun anymore, which is not surprising given my mother's unexpected death in February. She claims to be in love with the AP, but without any strings attached. I never saw her being dissatisfied with me, and she even stated that she was unhappy with life in general. So what I believe happened was that she cheated, developed affections for AP and abandoned me for him. Once that was evident, I decided to let her go and focus on myself. At this point, I don't care what she's doing or if she'll return. I am fine either way. Work is going well. I've joined a gym and have been going 3 times a week. My muscles are hurting, and I've been talking to this lovely girl since childhood. Even though it's only friendship, I'm grateful to have a female friend with whom I can chat about anything. She lost her father last year, so we can all empathize with losing a parent. So sure, I'm fine. Regarding the divorce, we had to acquire a large number of documents, which were then forwarded to the mediator. We are currently waiting to hear from him before scheduling our next meeting and moving forward with the divorce. As of right now, I've already decided that the divorce will proceed, regardless of whether my soon-to-be ex-wife returns. Divorce is inevitable since the marriage has ended. Update 4. We'll sign our divorce papers and make it official in 4 days. This is going to be a long post because I haven't updated in nearly 4 months. Well, I made some blunders along the way, but I also made movements that restored my power and made me respect myself again. For starters, 5 months after the first shock, I no longer think about or feel affected by the adultery. So, for everyone going through a difficult period, please believe me, it will get better, and time is on your side. After adultery and our breakup, I committed blunders. I begged, pleaded, became angry, furious, and felt completely out of control, as if she had lost her mind. This persisted for around 2 months. Unfortunately, after this period, I decided to stop whining. I told her that I had given it a lot of thought and that I would still be open to seeing her and talking to her, that I believed there might be a future for us, but that I couldn't guarantee anything. I have not contacted her in the last 3 months, at least not about casual matters or the relationship. The only things I inquired about were our upcoming divorce, finances, and our shared house. I didn't just sit and wait for the past 3 months. I am now 32 years old, and for the first time in my life, I went to the gym to work out, muscle building specifically, as I have always been on the slim side. For the past 3 months I've been going to the gym 4 times a week with complete dedication. I'm also seeing an improvement in my muscles and appearance. However, this goes beyond. The gym not only improves my physical look, but it also benefits my mental health. At first I started working out to keep myself occupied and distracted, but 3 months later, I look and feel much better about myself. I'm rediscovering confidence that I didn't realize I had. Pro tip of the day. When you're going through a difficult moment, the gym seems to help both physically and mentally. Regarding our shared house, I spoke with the bank, and I'm able to lend more money and take on a larger mortgage. I have to pay my ex-wife approximately $65K for the house, but I am able and will do so. After signing everything and paying her, I will be the only owner of the mutual house, which is worth approximately $300,000. I'm not happy about having to pay her $65K, but in the long term, I'm far better off owning my own home, which is worth roughly 5 times that amount. Furthermore, she no longer has her own home. She officially lives with her mother again, but I know she frequently visits AP's place. I'm not contacting her, so how do I know? I will get to that. My ex and I share a mutual buddy. We never hang out together, but we do communicate on a regular basis. As far as I know, my ex left me to be with AP and immediately began a new relationship. I'm not sure what's going on with my ex, and at times it appears she's lost her mind. I try to keep my thoughts away from her, but occasionally they travel where they shouldn't. At the moment, I think I could refer to AP as BF because that's what he is now. However, I will stick with AP because that is how it began. Anyway, concerning AP and my ex-wife, karma is a B********, and it's beginning to bite hard. When my ex and AP first got together 5 months ago, everything appeared fine for them. However, the tables are starting to turn. AP is currently at home suffering from depression, which I know since a common acquaintance showed me screenshots of a chat between my ex-wife and her. Additionally, AP is currently out of work. Even when the infidelity initially occurred, I always felt superior to AP due to his lack of morality. And I had already concluded that he was worthless in comparison to me. Well, now I know for certain, which makes me feel like my ex-wife has gone insane. I'm not conceited, but I am certain that I am the catch and a far superior man than her AP. A little extra. At the beginning of their relationship, I was still contacting and warning her. Well, I think I was correct all along. Not only does AP prove himself to be the loser I suspected he was, but he also introduces her to a substance that has the potential to destroy her life. I discovered this through a mutual buddy. I haven't spoken with my ex-wife about it. If she wants to trash her own life, that is her choice, but it appears to be going bad quickly. My ex-wife is undoubtedly struggling and may even be questioning her own decisions. I hadn't spoken or seen her over the holidays, Christmas and New Year's. However, around a week into the new year, 2023, she texted me unexpectedly, asking if I was home and if she could come over. She came over to my house and the visit lasted only about 5 minutes. She stopped by to tell me she had spent Christmas Day alone, sobbing. She inquired about my holidays and how I was doing. I informed her that my Christmas was okay, but not the best. I lost my mother last year, and these were the first holidays without her, so it was decent but not amazing. However, I told her I was doing well, which I am. So for me, this was strange. The only thing I can think about from this entire visit and why she would be concerned about how I'm doing is whether she has any regrets. Time will tell. I also chatted with my ex's mother. My ex-mother-in-law called after New Year's to wish me a happy new year and best wishes. I must admit that I did not expect the call, but it was great to hear from her because she had been a part of our family for the past 8 years. My mother-in-law told me that my ex-wife hasn't been doing so well lately. Apparently, she is quite sad and crying a lot since she is mourning her marriage. My ex even told her mother, "I wish it wouldn't have to be like this," implying that she is having second thoughts. However, only my ex has the ability to reach out and make a move, which I do not anticipate happening at this time. The only authority I truly have is to grant her the divorce she requested and then walk away from her life, which I did. I am separating myself from her life, divorcing her, and improving myself every day. I apologize for the lengthy message, but I believe this covers all I needed to say. We will sign the divorce papers 4 days from now. Even though I'm doing well, I'm still human, and I still mourn our marriage and my ex-wife on occasion. I'm sorry to see what's happened to her, but I'm also aware that it's beyond my control and not my concern. Let me conclude by thanking everyone in this community. Many thanks. Without your assistance, I would not be where I am today, both emotionally and physically. Forgotten and excluded from my parents' wedding. After 25 years together, I exposed their neglect on social media and revealed the truth. I, 17F, was just forgotten on my parents' wedding day. My parents have been together for approximately 25 years but never married. That's why when my father, 50M, proposed to my mother, 49F, on their anniversary, which they had always celebrated on the day my mother discovered she was pregnant with my eldest sister, despite the fact that they had previously been together, everyone, including me, was overjoyed and celebrated the occasion. This happened way back in February. They moved right into wedding preparations, deciding early on that they would hold a modest affair in Hawaii, with only their closest family and friends for an intimate ceremony. Almost immediately, my mother asked my sister, 25F, to be her maid of honor, and my father asked my brother, 22M, to be his groomsman. I was not surprised nor angered by this. My sister had always been a mommy's girl, and they both enjoyed spending time together shopping and socializing, so they had a strong bond. The same goes for my father and brother. They were often playing football together and messing about with cars. My father even coached my brother's team in middle school. That usually left me as the odd one out. I attempted to participate in my family's interests and groups, but was consistently turned down. Maybe they sensed that my interest in their activities wasn't genuine, or maybe they just didn't mind. Regardless, I was used to being the last and least important member of my family. Mom had a sister, and Dad had a brother. My parents had each other, and my 2 siblings were closer than they had ever been to me, leaving me feeling lonely and alienated in my own house. During the wedding preparations, it was suggested that I be the flower girl, but my sister thought that role would be more suited to her daughter, 3F, so that proposal was swiftly dropped. Later, my maternal grandmother offered that I read a poem or give a little statement during the ceremony, but both of my parents declined because they wanted the wedding to be low-key and didn't believe a cheesy and sappy speech would match their vision. Those were their exact words. I was still fine with it all, even though it hurt to know that I would be the only family member not in the wedding party or given any role at all on the big day. As the wedding date approached, my parents and siblings were increasingly involved in the arrangements. I observed my mother did not invite me to dress shopping, and whenever they discussed the site or the occasion, I was excluded. So I decided to keep quiet and see if they would understand I wasn't involved in any way, waiting for them to ask me something about the wedding. But that never occurred. The wedding was scheduled 3 weeks ago, toward the end of August. My mother casually asked me the day before their departure whether I had my luggage ready because we couldn't be late at the airport. I honestly informed her that I had not prepared anything. She looked perplexed for a second before snapping at me for not being prepared. I immediately asked her if I had a ticket, and her face turned pale. Yes, they hadn't even purchased my ticket, and I'm not sure if I had a room or any other amenities once there. Even though I was the only member in my family without a steady income, I work as a part-time babysitter. My parents had purchased first-class tickets for my siblings and a couple of other friends who were attending the wedding, but they had overlooked me. My mother urged me not to make a big deal about it and that they could simply find me a low-cost, last-minute ticket from a budget airline. I just said, then what do I even have to wear to the ceremony? She went shopping with Sis months ago for her and all of the other female guests' outfits, but I was not included. That's when my father walked in and ordered me to suck it up, claiming I'd never been a girly girl, so I could wear whatever. I was upset because, even though I'm not the most feminine girl on the earth, I would have liked to be a part of my parents' wedding. It wasn't just the outfit, it was the fact that I had been excluded from almost everything for months. We all got into a fight, with them calling me entitled and accusing me of making myself little on purpose so they would forget about me, as if that was a sufficient reason to ignore their child. They ended up warning me that if I kept this attitude, I might as well skip the entire event. I replied with a defiant fine, and went into my room. The next morning, they all departed for Hawaii without me. The ceremony was tiny, but they all shared numerous photos on Instagram and Facebook about how amazing and magical the entire week was. People noticed that I wasn't in any of the images and began asking my parents why. They responded that, unfortunately, I got COVID before the trip and had to stay home. I made a throwaway because I didn't want to give out my personal information, which is freely accessible on my real account. Unfortunately, this is not a fake. You are the first to bring up the affair theory in my mind, and I'm not sure what to make of it. I hope this is not true. Commenter: the wedding party and other guests received first-class tickets, but their youngest child did not. How is this possible? Then they don't rectify it by buying you a first-class ticket, but rather an economy ticket because it's cheaper. Did you even have accommodations? No dress either, just wear whatever? Now it is your fault that they are careless. Hell no, these parents stink. I believe when she started a cheaper airline, she meant it was more likely that I would arrive on time, as their aircraft was allegedly fully booked. Again, I'm not sure about the accommodations, they made no mention of them. I just know that they all stayed at the same hotel where the ceremony took place. Commenter: instead of fighting for minimum attention from her parents and siblings, she should focus her energies on seeking other sources of fulfillment. I really don't have the strength to do anything these days. I'm starting college later this year and the plan was to live at home because it's not far away, but now I just want to leave. I'm not sure how though. I don't have enough savings or a job right now, and the thought of going out and getting one feels overwhelming. I don't want to drop out, but I want to go somewhere else. I wrote this yesterday because I needed to rant, but I didn't want to start an additional controversy, so it's anonymous. Commenter: if she is PLA, in college, she should proceed with the emancipation process. Emancipation will save her a fortune on her schooling, and I guarantee you that her horrible parents did not plan to benefit her in any way. Before all of this, I planned to attend college in my hometown. It's a terrific college downtown, and I was overjoyed to be accepted. A couple of my high school buddies are also going there and will live at home. I was saving to buy a car for simpler transportation, and they were going to pay for my tuition and other expenses, but now I simply want to leave this house. Commenter: stay strong. Do not let them get under your skin. Even if you have to find roommates or move in with a friend, depart as soon as you feel secure with your money. There are Facebook groups and other resources for finding roommates, particularly in college locations. I know that's what I should do. I have a buddy who is moving into a studio apartment near our campus, but I don't have a job right now and don't want to be a burden to her. She and I are close, so I am sure she would invite me to move in with her, but I don't want to be a burden. Also, I don't have a job right now, so I can't pay rent, which is something else I need to work out. Update 1, thank you very much. A few days earlier, I couldn't get out of bed, and my family's comments had convinced me that I was to blame for all that had happened. But after seeing the answers to my article and all of your support, I felt reassured with my acts and thoughts for my family. I'm still dealing with feelings of guilt and melancholy, but anytime I start to spiral, I remember how much this community of strangers has supported me and I try to calm myself down with your comments. Thanks to your opinion and suggestions, I finally decided to call my grandmother and tell her the whole thing. Before I continue, I should clarify that my grandmother, 77F, did not attend the wedding. I stated it in the comments, but I feel compelled to include it here as well. She lives a few states away and has mobility concerns, so she no longer travels. We went to see her around Easter, and she suggested that I read a poem during the wedding, but that was the last time I saw her in person before all of this. She has always been very affectionate to me and has previously chastised my parents for their favoritism, but she is unable to play a more active role in my upbringing because she lives so far away. I'm constantly apprehensive about troubling her because of her age and health. She had a mild stroke a few years ago and is now back to normal, but I'm still concerned. Anyway, I contacted her and explained everything about the wedding, even how my parents didn't even purchase me a ticket to accompany them. She came to the same conclusion as the majority of the commenters. It was simply unthinkable that they had forgotten and done it on purpose. I cried on the phone with her, explaining how I was feeling, how this had been going on forever, how I felt in the aftermath, and most importantly, my need to go. She was really lovely and soothing to me, telling me that I didn't have anything else to worry about because she had my back completely. She told me to take it easy but make plans for the future and she promised to help me. After that chat, which lasted around 2 hours, I felt better and decided to take her advice. I began working on a plan for the upcoming academic year. I have a friend who is going to rent a studio near our future campus. She has a wonderful relationship with her parents, but she has 5 younger siblings and wants to be more independent, so she opted to move out. I asked if I might live with her temporarily and pay rent as soon as I acquired a job. She immediately agreed and advised me not to worry about rent or anything else until I was in a better situation. We had a good cry together when I told her about my parents' wedding incident. This happened a few days ago and I had planned to post an update at the time. However, my grandmother called my dad and siblings to chastise them on how they were treating me. My brother texted me later with a half-hearted apology, stating he didn't realize I wasn't included and simply assumed I wouldn't enjoy the vacation. He also accused me of uploading the photo solely to cause trouble. My sister, on the other hand, berated me, telling me that I kept making my problems public and blaming them on the family although they were all innocent. My folks have been acting strangely since returning from their trip. They berated me and were outraged at first, but since then, we've just ignored each other. After my grandmother called them, they came into my room and told me that if I wanted to put this whole thing to rest, I needed to stop talking about it. They say it would have all been over if I had only kept my mouth shut. I requested them to leave my room and contacted my grandmother again to explain what had transpired. She then told me that she and my uncle, my mother's older brother, had bought plane tickets to see me. I was honestly concerned about this because my grandmother's health isn't great, and this level of work is too much for her. I understand how difficult it is for her to get on a plane, so I attempted to discourage her from coming and assured her that everything would be fine. But she refused to listen, telling me that she was overdue for a chat with my parents and wanted to see me. I'm worried about her and feel like I pushed her to take this lengthy, difficult trip because of me. I want nothing more than to hug her right now, yet I'm concerned about her. At the very least, my uncle will accompany her, but I hope she does not overwork herself or that nothing bad happens to her, because that would shatter me. They arrive tomorrow and haven't notified my parents about their vacation. My grandmother begged me to keep it a secret until she arrived. I'm hoping she'll be able to persuade my parents of the error in their ways, or at the very least, assist me in breaking the news to them that I'll be moving out shortly and intend to maintain no contact. I'm concerned about her having to do so much for me and troubling her, but I also admire and love her for everything she does. Update 2. Many people have messaged me and commented on the post, and I haven't had time to answer to anyone until today, so I apologize. You've all been so kind and caring, and it's been genuinely eye-opening and horrifying to realize how many people have experienced similar stories of neglect and abuse. I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to send some kind thoughts to this online stranger. This update will be lengthy, so I apologize in advance. I'll just resume where I left off. My grandmother called to say she was coming here to see me and help me out. I was quite concerned since my grandmother has a difficult time traveling, so taking this trip would put her under a lot of stress, and I felt responsible for her because I was the one who contacted her. She came early Monday morning with my uncle and I went to pick her up at the airport. Not going to lie, it was an extremely powerful and emotional experience. As soon as I saw her, I went to her arms and burst into tears. I'm not sure if I could tell her anything because I was crying so hard. I had so many things to say. Thank you for coming. For being so kind to me, and for having my back. I regret forcing you to take this vacation. I feel terrible at home. I'm not sure if my parents love me, but I know you do. Am I an affair child? When I saw her, I was struck by all of this, as well as remorse and fear. But she hugged me tightly in her arms and assured me that everything would be fine. My uncle hugged us as well. I'm not sure how long we stayed like this, but it must have been a while before my uncle urged us to get going. We got a taxi and proceeded to their hotel. My grandmother had watery eyes, and I could feel her heavy breathing, which terrified me, yet she hugged me and smiled the entire time. She had rented a double room for me to stay with her for those days, and once they were settled in and I was calmer, we sat down, and I poured my heart out to them. Years of neglect, emotional abuse, how horrible I felt after the wedding, but also how I had felt for years. I stated how my parents were attempting to make me feel guilty for everything that had happened, and how terrified I was about my future, but that my #1 priority was to get out of the house, even if it meant sacrificing my academics. I informed them that I had made plans to move in with a buddy and was seeking work. I also told them about this post and how several people assumed I was an affair child, and I admitted that I was starting to doubt that myself. It was a lot, and I could tell they were both deeply touched by what I was saying, but they continued to soothe me and make me feel safe enough to open up. After I expressed my anxieties, my grandmother reassured me that I had nothing to worry about and that she would always be there for me. First, She assured me that I was not an affair child. She informed me that both of my parents were overjoyed when my mother became pregnant with me, and she knew that adultery would be a deal breaker for my mother, as she imagined it would be for my father. Apparently, the favoritism started when I was 3 or 4 years old, when my parents were continually complaining about having a young child in the family. They were frustrated because they could transport my older siblings to their activities but not me. I was also quite shy and a bit of a crybaby, which they could not tolerate, setting me apart from my siblings. She told me that my parents had saved more than enough for my college. They're pretty wealthy, so that had never been an issue for me, despite my recent concern that they could take the funds away from me. She told me that if they ever tried to refuse to pay for my education, she would handle it, and she would not allow me to drop out due to financial constraints. She also offered to help me with rent and an allowance so that I could move out. She was quite giving, and I thanked her, but I also mentioned that this experience had been eye-opening. I had no idea how wealthy I had been monetarily my entire life. Despite their flaws, my parents have spoiled me financially. I attended private school, received a huge monthly allowance, and owned a car for years, and they never complained about my expenses. Seeing the experiences presented here made me understand how fortunate I was and how relying on them put me vulnerable to losing everything. I told her that I wanted to be independent, not just from my parents, but from everyone. I feel as if I need to learn to stand on my own. To be honest, writing this and reading the experiences of individuals in truly bad situations makes me feel like a spoiled brat my entire life. My grandmother demanded I take her assistance until I no longer needed it, and I accepted, but I still want to look for work and try to make it on my own. We relaxed at the hotel for a bit because we were all tired from the morning, but in the afternoon, we took a cab to my place. When I stepped through the door, my parents were completely surprised to see my grandmother and uncle with me. Before they could say anything, my grandmother urged me to go pack my basics while they spoke with my parents. I rushed upstairs and overheard my grandmother and uncle berating my parents for everything they had put me through. At first I could hear my parents defending themselves, but they finally quieted down. When I arrived downstairs with 2 suitcases and a backpack containing my most crucial belongings, they were all in the living room. My father turned crimson red and my mother sobbed like a kid. When she spotted me, she stretched her arms toward me, apologizing, but I simply responded, "Save it," in the coldest tone I could conjure. My father told me I didn't have to be a jerk, and both my uncle and grandmother ordered him to stop up. I exited the premises at that point and waited for the cab outside. Back at the motel, my grandmother told me that I would not have to return to them. She informed me that my parents had never questioned my college tuition and had intended to throw me an elaborate birthday party to compensate for the wedding fiasco. They even planned to give me a car as an apology for everything. But my grandmother was having none of it because it was evident to her that they were just attempting to save face. She believed they were making these decisions on the fly, and that a party and a car wouldn't compensate for everything they had put me through. My mother's heart apparently broke when my grandmother informed her that I had even questioned my paternity. My mother burst into tears, but my grandmother informed her that given their actions, what more could they expect after constantly excluding me from family functions since I was a child? My grandmother said she would make sure they made the payments for my school unless I decided to cut relations with them and have her pay till I could pay for myself. I asked her to do that. I felt horrible since I didn't believe it was her obligation, but I really don't want anything else from my parents anymore. Although my grandmother is very well off, she is not as affluent as my parents, but she informed me that everything was okay and that whatever went to me would be deducted from my mother's inheritance. The next day, I went with my buddy, her parents, and my grandmother to inspect the studio where we planned to relocate. When my grandmother arrived, she said, "Absolutely not." I knew from the photographs that the studio was small and dusty, but when we discovered water damage and mildew in the bathroom and kitchen, as well as rust on the old equipment, it was evident that it wasn't livable. I was aware of all of this previously and thought I could deal with it for a time, but what really changed our minds was when the grown-ups pointed out that the studio was street level in a terrible neighborhood, in a building that didn't appear particularly safe. There were bullet holes on the walls, which I had not noticed until my friend's father pointed them out. Grandma and my friend's parents offered to help us find an apartment in a better area and cover the fees. Both my friend and I want to be self-sufficient, but we realize that with potential minimum wage employment in such a high-demand region, we would be unable to get anything better on our own. So the plan is to hunt for a 2-bedroom apartment, and my buddy and I will pay what we intended for the studio, with her parents and my grandmother covering the rest. I know I'm still spoiled to anticipate aid from my grandmother, but after seeing the studio in person, I honestly wouldn't have felt secure there. My friend's parents, who were aware of what I was going through, invited me to live with them until we found a suitable apartment, for which I'm really thankful. I've been staying in the motel with Granny since she leaves in a few days. Apparently, my friend, her parents, and my grandmother discussed this before coming to me to ensure I had a safe place to stay until we moved into the apartment, which has yet to be discovered. I teared up as I thanked them, seeing how many people had rallied around me to give assistance. Since then, I've started moving some of my belongings from my parents' house and setting up my space at a friend's. Every time I return, my mother cries and apologizes, and my father has also apologized, but I stay distant and cold toward them. My sister called to say her mother was a wreck and that I was a D-bag for what I had done. Before she could say anything else, I hung up and blocked her. I was about to block my brother as well, but I noticed he had sent me a very long message in which he apologized repeatedly for all he had done and for not comprehending how horribly our parents treated me. He stated he had been doing a lot of self-reflection since Grandma called and realized he was mistaken in presuming I wasn't on the trip because I didn't want to go. He also regretted allowing our parents to exclude me for so many years. I replied briefly, thanking him for his thoughts but stating that I need space and am not ready to accept his apology just yet. I believe he is sincere because he has never been mean to me in the same manner that my sister has, only distant. However, I feel compelled to keep him at a distance for the time being. Keeping in touch with my family feels like the correct thing to do while everything is still so new. Maybe in the future he will show me that he is just as vicious as everyone else, and I will block him. However, as long as he respects my boundaries, I feel better not cutting him off totally. I've also scheduled an appointment with a therapist who specializes in neglected teenagers, and my first preliminary consultation is next week, which will be sponsored by my grandmother. This makes me even more eager to get a job to relieve her of the load, despite the fact that she has repeatedly stated that she is willing to do everything for me. That's where things are right now. I'm not sure if I'll blog again. Maybe after I start classes or move into my apartment, but for now, I'm just trying to spend time with my grandmother and uncle. I'm working on learning to grow and overcoming the feelings of guilt and depression that have haunted me for so long. I'd like to thank this community again for being so nice and helpful to me. To everyone who has messaged me with their own personal stories of being kicked out or having to make it on your own at such a young age, you have made me feel a lot less alone. You've also shown me that things can improve if I work hard for them. I feel lucky because I have such an incredible support system in my grandmother, uncle and buddy, but you're right, reaching out has been the finest move I could have made. Opening out about my sentiments to those that love me, as well as all of my internet pals, has genuinely saved my life. So thank you. I am more appreciative than words can describe. Commenter, I'm curious. When you returned to collect your belongings, what exactly did your folks say? OP. Every time I've gone there, my mother has been crying and saying I'm sorry, again and again, but I haven't talked to her, so she hasn't expressed anything in particular. I also haven't given her a chance. My father has largely remained silent, staring at me whenever I enter and depart. When he apologized, he said something along the lines of, I'm sorry for everything, without acknowledging any fault on his part. I'm not sure if they're shocked by all that's going on. I'm overwhelmed and haven't had time to digest it all, or if they don't believe they've done anything wrong and are simply acting for grandma. I honestly do not know. Commenter, don't chop off your nose to spite your face when it comes to college money. Your parents are responsible for paying the entire bill. Don't burden yourself with that expense when they can cover it. It's the absolute minimum they can do. OOP, my grandmother has already told me that it is unacceptable for me not to attend college simply because my parents will not pay, and she will not allow me to take out student loans either. I asked if she would co-sign, and she flatly refused, saying she'd rather pay herself than see me upset about money. I will not sacrifice my education because of my parents, but I will take advantage of this opportunity with my grandmother. I'd rather not receive money from my parents because I know they'll hold it over me for the rest of my life, as if I owed them. I'm really fortunate that my grandmother will take care of this, even though I feel I don't deserve her. Commenter, I hope you don't feel bad for coming from a wealthy family. You are not privileged. You appear to be more self-aware than many others from your upbringing. Working and living separately from your family will allow you to explore the world. I honestly don't believe you're a pampered, affluent child. Working for what we need develops character and teaches us a variety of skills, including how to deal with tough people, the value of each hour and dollar earned, collaboration, societal institutions, and more. I'm pleased you have a safety net with your grandmother, and don't listen to anyone who would judge you for it. Many of us live paycheck to paycheck, and I would not want that on anyone just starting out in life. If you ever want to give us an update on how things are doing, I will absolutely read it. Thank you for sharing this terrible period in your life. OOP, I feel more than guilty. angry at my heritage and how ignorant I've been my entire life about my privileges. This self-awareness you stated has only recently come to light for me. When I initially clashed with my parents, I didn't think about money or how I'd support myself. That's always been a given for me, which is wonderful considering I'm still under 18. But after posting here and reading posts from others who have had to deal with the financial ramifications of being neglected, cutting off their family, or leaving home at an early age, I realized how out of touch I had been.